RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. That's right. It is now time for another very exciting episode of Red Pill News Live. Good to see you out there in the audience. Thank you very much for hanging out. If you guys haven't yet, do me a favor, please hit that like button. That would be awesome. All right, so as you can see from the thumbnail, Jack Smith, he done effed around and found out. He knowingly, with consciousness of guilt, committed perjury before a sworn congressional committee, and now he is being referred for a criminal investigation and indictment to the Department of Justice. Now, we've also got some updates on the passage of the NDAA, which many people are concerned about because of the supposed merging of U.S. and Israeli militaries. We're going to go dive into that subject just a little bit. Got to talk about fraud, got to talk about the Save America Act, and we are going to talk about some things that Congress actually is doing, albeit not that much. So do me a favor, sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we're going to be right back after this.
Science proves that a healthy immune system is the body's first defense against the smallest of ailments to the most catastrophic. Coriolus Versicolor is the most sought-after, all-natural supplement for both humans and pets to help boost the immune system. There are over 400 studies worldwide on its effectiveness in humans, including Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, MD Anderson Cancer Center, and now from the University of Pennsylvania School of Veterinary Medicine. Together, we can help reverse this terrible tide now plaguing your loved ones and give them the immune-boosting supplements that they need.
3 boys taught me 2 things. Summer is an adventure and bugs are relentless. As an herbalist, I know you don't need harsh chemicals to protect your family. Here at Tamarack Garden, we've got you covered with natural sunscreen, mosquito and tick repellent that's even safe for your pets, a salve to draw out bug bites, and soothing sunburn cream, all made with the power of plants. Because we think summer memories should last longer than the bug bites. Tamarack Garden, protect your family naturally and eat your weeds.
All right, thank you very much. Hope everybody's having a great day. I see it in the chat. Jack Smith, it's just a criminal referral. There's lots of criminal referrals. Nothing ever happens with criminal referrals. Well, the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope in regards to Jack Smith's criminal referral is because his crime relates to the spying on members of Congress. And it seems that when things directly affect members of the House and the Senate, they are far more likely to take direct and drastic action on them. Things happen to the people of the United States of America all the time. And to be frank, they could probably give 2 shits about most of us until it's time to ask us to cast a ballot or to donate to their campaigns. So we will talk about the Jack Smith situation in depth a little bit later in the show. I want to open today with a clarification from Mike Lindell, because as we learned yesterday, allegedly Mike Lindell had suggested that he was in favor or he was going to implement some type of amnesty period. As I told you yesterday, Federal government is what dictates immigration policy. Mike Lindell, as the governor of Minnesota, would have no power or authority to delegate some type of a 6-month amnesty period or even the handing out of visas, which could then be used to stay in the country legally. So Mike Lindell has done a spot on Lindell TV, of course, because that's his spot. And he says that this is all fake news. Of course, I am 100% America first. I'm not surprised that Mike Lindell would say this. I'm also not surprised that he says that these comments were taken out of context. Well, let's just take a listen to what Mike has to say about it. This is a 5-minute clip. We're not going to watch the whole thing because Mike tends to meander, but we will talk about this after a moment. Let me just make this full volume.
Mike Lindell's a liberal now. Mike Lindell's went out to the other side. Different ones. Steve Bannon did a big post going, what I have to look into this. This is it hit me from every direction. It was trending, but I'm doing a big speech. I was up in Sauk Center, Minnesota, with one of our biggest rallies with CNN there, which they probably thought it was funny. It's out there going viral, and I can't even defend myself and talk about it because I'm at a rally and I'm there and I'm going here. I explained the whole thing in detail. I wanted to work something out where we could get these illegals documented, fingerprinted and stuff, because if you have them in the system, are you ready, everybody? Then they can't vote. If they vote, you've got it right there. You got them fingerprinted. You've got all their info in the system. All of a sudden, they show up on the voter roll and they vote. You're out of our country. That's it. You don't get to be here. Working here's a privilege.
All right. So I can sort of see where he's coming from, but I don't think that in order to catch these people doing anything illegal, you need to offer them some sort of legalization of their status. From my perspective, and I have always held this perspective, if you are here in our country illegally, you need to leave. And we are going to find you, and we're going to get rid of you. Now, it may take a long time. In fact, I'm certain that it will, because there are millions of them that are here in our country. But if you give them some sort of legal status and put them on the books, then you are essentially granting them a type of amnesty. This is exactly what Maria Elvira Salazar is asking for with the Dignidad Act, the Dignity Act. You're going to take somebody who has already committed a crime. Just because they haven't been convicted of a crime or charged with a crime yet doesn't mean that they haven't actually committed a crime. And that crime is something that has resulted in damage to not only the American economy, but to so many Americans across this nation. That crime has damaged the United States irreparably in many cases. And I don't think that we need to be offering them anything at all. Now, again, Mike Lindell has no power over this. He's not even the governor of Minnesota yet. Even if he becomes the governor of Minnesota, he will have no authority when it comes to issues of immigration. But you don't need to get somebody legalized here in the United States to make sure that they can't vote. Even if they're here with some form of visa, they can still go to a Democrat-run state as it exists right now, get a driver's license, and 9 times out of 10, they're going to be automatically registered to vote. And as we just saw in New Jersey, at least 400, if not 35,000, have cast ballots there in the last 10, 15 years or so. So I just, Mike, I feel like you put your foot in your mouth, and I think that maybe that's where you need to leave it. We need to get rid of illegals. Obviously, we don't want them voting, but there are other ways to address issues of them having voted. And I think that the full criminal enforcement of the laws that we have on the books right now and the enforcement of the regulations that we have on the books right now is the way to go about it. Not creating some type of additional mechanism, which is just going to layer things up and make it even more convoluted than it is already. Mike Lindell is going to be the Republican nominee for governor in the state of Minnesota. You may not like Mike Lindell. You may not have cared for the things that he's done or said over the years. But if you live in Minnesota, are you going to vote for him or are you going to vote for Amy Klobuchar? Are you going to vote at all? I don't know. I think that we've reached this point in America where a lot of people have just lost faith in the system. As I have always said, I may think that our elections are fraudulent. They are oftentimes fake and gay. Doesn't mean they are 100% of the time, but it's enough that I think we need to talk about it because it needs to be fixed. If they're not fixed, then people are not going to have the confidence and they're not going to feel like they even need to vote. I will always vote because I don't want somebody else voting in my place. That's exactly what I think is going to happen. I've seen it happen in too many occasions. All right, so moving on from the Mike Lindell thing, got to check in with Corey Mills as well. Corey Mills, although all of the things that I said yesterday have borne out through court proceedings and the statements of people who were involved with Corey Mills, the investigation into Corey Mills is something that he does not want people talking about. And Eric Daughtry on X says that Corey Mills is actually threatening legal action against him. I believe that he works for Florida Voice News because they posted yesterday that he is currently under investigation by the Department of Justice. Now, an internal poll shows that Corey Mills' situation, his refusal to kind of deal with this in an honest way, might jeopardize the GOP majority. There's a lot that could jeopardize the GOP majority, but right now it's a tenuous majority at that. So anyways, Corey Mills is now saying that he might be suing people who are talking about the fact that he may be under investigation. Let's take a look.
Tonight, Congressman Mills is under criminal investigation by the Department of Justice. The details are scarce, but according to NBC sources, the investigation touches on his finances, and investigators are interested in some of his overseas business dealings. A source also confirms this is being run out of the Middle District of Florida. Mills represents Seminole and Volusia counties. Now, this is not the first time the congressman's name has been wrapped up in investigations. Just last week, Mills won the first round of a legal fight involving a
Tom says, I don't know why Minnesota cannot come up with a good conservative or Republican to win, because they don't have any of them in Minnesota. There's hardly any. And the ones that are there, they know that it's basically a losing battle, or they're too conservative and they can't get money behind them. I know a couple of them, but I mean, they're not people who are even trying to run for governor of the state. They know it's basically a losing battle. Now, they're also sitting in office in one position or another, and they don't want to give up that seat because that's where they feel they're effective. Now, Corey Mills apparently seems to be concerned that the story about his DOJ investigation may be coming as a result of an opponent of his, because he is going to be facing a number of primary challengers in the Florida election, which is coming up very shortly in just a couple of weeks. And so this is apparently the direction that he's going, looking into Florida Voice News to see if they are running this story as a result of an opponent of his looking to denigrate his position. You know, frankly, Corey, you don't need anybody to buy a story like this. I mean, there's enough stuff out there about you that has been said and that people have questioned that you simply haven't addressed. I mean, the fact that you have just kind of ignored all of these things in light of the fact that you've got an ex-girlfriend who has a restraining order against you, who has lots of text messages, which clearly show that there was some weird stuff going on in your relationship. I mean, like, if you really want people to look at you and think that this is serious, I truly think that these are things that you should address. Whenever politicians just choose to glaze past any of these credible things that are said about them, I mean, of course, people are going to continue to look at them with a little bit more of a critical eye and say, hey, why are you not defending yourself? You really should be defending yourself. So anyways, I don't know if Corey Mills is going to win his primary or not. We'll go ahead and see. No, and not Angie, not true. There's plenty of stuff that Nancy Mace said, but there was plenty of stuff that predated Nancy Mace, and that did not originate with her. Nancy Mace obviously has her own problems. I think that Nancy Mace, there was a rumor going around that I heard from somebody on Capitol Hill that Nancy Mace and Corey Mills were in a relationship at one point, and so the sort of animosity they have towards each other is as a result of that. I think that it's totally true that Nancy Mace can be inappropriate, can be childish, and can be spreading lies, while at the same time, Corey Mills can have his own problems with his integrity and the way that he treats people. So, I mean, all of that. He said FBI didn't find anything about his statements. So, I mean, in what respect specifically are you talking about? Because there have been a number of things. What I'm specifically talking about right now is his restraining order and the ongoing court case with his ex-girlfriend, where she produced text messages showing that he threatened to release sex tapes that they took together. That's called sexual blackmail. That is not cool in any situation that you might find. Okay, so now let's talk about what Congress is doing. This appears to be on its face a win. An insider trading ban bill was passed in the House. Now it advances to the Senate. However, this legislation is not necessarily all that it's cracked up to be. It really does stop short of being a comprehensive ban on stock trading that most Americans, I think, would agree needs to have been passed. This is called the Stop Insider Trading Act, and it was passed yesterday with a margin of 232 to 198. More than a dozen Democrats did join the Republicans to get this passed, but mostly the Democrats voted against it. I would say that overwhelmingly there is public support for a total ban on members of Congress and their families trading stocks either individually or in mutual funds or futures or options or anything. But this has only gotten bigger over the last couple of years as certain accounts on X, such as, Unusual Whales and the Nancy Pelosi stock trading platform have grown in popularity. People are looking at the portfolios and the investments of these members of Congress, and it's quite clear that they are using the information they get behind the scenes in order to get fantastically wealthy on the front end. Dan Crenshaw, his portfolio, last I checked, had outperformed Nancy Pelosi's, and a lot of people don't even think about that stuff. Dan's obviously not going to be a senator any longer, and that's great. But this happens on both sides of the aisle. So the legislation advanced by the House falls short of the sweeping ban that most people are advocating for. Now, exactly what does it do? Well, it was introduced by Republican Wisconsin Representative Brian Stile, and the bill would prohibit members of Congress from purchasing individual stocks while in office, but it would allow them to keep the stocks that they already own. So whatever they have when they become a member of Congress, they get to keep. Lawmakers could also continue selling individual stocks, provided they publicly disclose their intent to sell at least 7 days beforehand. Okay, that's cool, because then that gives the people of America an idea on what type of information they might be trading on. Honestly, I think that as long as they're not trading on their information they're getting from committees or secrets that they are being told on Capitol Hill, that's fine. If they have an idea just from watching the news that certain things are happening, that's not a big deal. But the problem is right now, people in Congress trade stocks and then they report it at some time later. And then the American people only learn about those trades well after the shit has hit the fan, so to speak. If you go back to the beginning of the pandemic, they had that private meeting in Congress telling the members of the House and the Senate that they were going to shut down the country. And basically every single one of those people sold every bit of stock that they had in hospitality, in hotels, in travel stocks, airliners. They sold all of them. The American people didn't get a chance to do that. That's really what I'm against. But the measure would also sharply increase penalties for violations of this disclosure clause. Members who failed to properly report stock transactions would face fines of $2,000 or 10% of the transaction's value, whichever is greater. So it starts at $2,000. That would be an increase from the current $200 penalty for a first offense. Now, Congress has previously passed a stock trading act back in 2012, but the penalties are weak. The enforcement is lacking. Nobody really does anything with it. It is a piece of legislation without any teeth. House Republicans also added a voter ID provision ahead of the floor consideration, which cost the bill some support from Democrats. And the provision would require voters in federal elections to present a valid physical photo ID to receive a regular ballot, while those without acceptable identification could cast a provisional ballot that would only be counted if they later submitted qualifying ID or a religious objection affidavit within 3 days. Who the hell is religiously objecting to showing an ID when they go to vote? I've never, ever heard of that. Who the hell would have added that? Now, Thomas Massie voted in favor of the bill, but he criticized it by saying Congress is not serious. He said we are voting on a stock trading ban for members of Congress, but Republicans added voter ID in the legislation, not to get Dems to vote for voter ID, but to get them to vote against the stock trading ban so they can use it in the November elections. I don't know that that's true, because there was still enough support to go ahead and get it passed. I think that it sounds more like the Congress is not serious because they aren't putting more measures in this bill to make it abundantly clear that these stocks cannot be traded in one form or another. We voted on a stock trading ban for members of Congress, but Republicans added voter ID to the legislation. He says it's to get people to vote against it, but again, people voted for it. Democrats also criticized both the substance of the legislation and House Republicans' decision to attach election integrity language to it. Representative Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez of Washington said on Tuesday that although she favored the legislation and voted for it, she opposed the decision to add voter ID. Why is it you don't want voter ID, Marie? Well, she says that this provision is from the Save America Act, which it is, and I don't care about that. I have no problem. I'd voted against these voter ID provisions repeatedly, and Senate Republicans continued to vote against them. House Republicans took a broadly nonpartisan issue and inserted politics provisions from the Save America Act. This is, again, not surprising to me, and I could care less because this is what happens whenever you have one party that is in charge of the House or the Senate. They will continually add these things in if they are unable to get them passed in any other form. So I don't care. That's not a big deal to me. All right. Now, also on the docket was the National Defense Authorization Act. And I had 7 Republicans voting against it. Josh Breckin from Oklahoma, Tim Burchett from Tennessee, Eli Crane from Arizona, Harriet Hagman from Wyoming, Anna Paulina Luna from Florida, Thomas Massey from Kentucky, and Chip Roy from Texas. Now, as I said in the introduction, this National Defense Authorization Act is the act that includes Section 219, which is what has been billed as the merging of the U.S. and Israeli militaries. I have said before that I have not read it that way, and I have actually read the language from the bill, so I will dive into it and tell you exactly what I think that means. But Anna Paulina Luna says, today I voted yes to ban insider trading and no to the NDAA in its current form as there were issues. I agree with her on that. The NDAA will be going back to conference with the Senate, which means that a different version will be coming back to the House for a vote before final passage. There will be changes. Keep you posted. And this is what always happens. You know, you'll have a version of the bill in the House that is passed. It goes to the Senate. They rework it. They send that new version back to the House. The House has to agree on whether or not they're going to pass it. They may add additional language or strip additional language out, which means that they have to send it back to the Senate to have it gone over yet again. Now, Tim Burchett also, of course, voted against it, but let's hear from him so that we can see exactly why.
Hey, everybody. Tim Burchett, just leaving the House floor. Several key votes today. The National Defense Authorization Act, I voted against it. It's $1.1 trillion spending. The 3 largest air forces in the world happen to be ours, our Air Force, our Army, and our Navy. And I think we spend more combined than the top 3 adversaries we have in the world are the 3.
Okay, so $1.1 trillion in spending from this NDAA, and we're not cutting back spending anywhere else. You know, this is another one of the reasons why I agree with Thomas Massey that Congress is not serious. Of course, you know, they were all big on DOGE and cutting costs at the time that it was being talked about, and Americans were hot and heavy on it. But now it's kind of fallen by the wayside. And here we are spending more money than we've ever spent before, and we continue to spend it every single place that Congress has authorized spending in the past. And they're also adding more money for Ukraine. There's that, by the way. So, yeah, I definitely have a problem with that. If I believe in a strong United States military, I believe in making sure that we keep us safe. I believe in furthering our research and development. But there's a lot of places that we have dumped money over the years that just continue to have money dumped into them without any sort of accountability or accounting. And as Tim says here, you know, we still can't pass an audit at the Pentagon.
3 largest anyway, and then they're supposedly gaining on us, and then we don't even pass an audit. I haven't passed an audit in over 30 years, and we're $40 trillion in debt, 1.1 trillion spending. It's just unbelievable to me. And we're sharing our intelligence with other countries, and it's just anyway.
Okay, so right there, sharing intelligence with other countries, that is Section 219. That is the cooperation between Israel and the United States. Now, the reason initially I said, this is not a wholly unexpected thing is because we already have intelligence and technology sharing agreements with other nations around the world. It's really not that unheard of. And the reason that this is happening right now is because we are also at the same time weaning Israel off of that $4 billion that we give them every year. Of course, Israel definitely wants to have a hold on the United States. They already do. Not going to lie to you there. But many people believe that this Section 219 and the technology and information sharing would result in Israel being able to essentially tell the U.S. military to go attack somebody at a whim. I don't believe that that is the case, but let's continue listening.
War pimps, what do you do? A lot of portfolio warriors out there, I guess.
Hey, can you give me a pigback ride?
No.
How about
Insider Trading Act? I voted for that, and it's not the best thing to do, but it's what we got to do. It's close. It puts us closer to it. Reconciliation, voted for it. Keep the government open, and that was probably a good thing. Anyway, a lot of other amendments, but.
Okay, and that's basically where he goes. Horn Dog says, do any members read the bills themselves? No. No, this is why they have people working for them in their offices. Yeah, they definitely don't read the bills themselves. Maybe some of them do. Maybe some of them read some of them. I would say the vast majority of the members of Congress have their staff read them, and then they go out and fundraise, and they glad hand, and they go to dinner and, go to cocaine-fueled orgies on the weekend. All right, now, Representative Lauren Boebert, she was not listed in that group of Republicans who voted either for or against the NDAA, and that's because she wasn't even there for the vote. This is kind of crazy. Take a listen to this. So she was apparently lured into a meeting at the time that the vote was going to take place, and it sounds like they basically didn't want her there for the vote. Take a listen.
So I got a whole bunch of men trying to muscle me into voting for the NDAA. Section
names. Who?
I
Who are
don't know
these
their,
men?
I don't know their freaking names. They're staffers. All right, listen to my.
See, staffers. Staffers are the ones with power. This is why it's so important that we get that provision stuck in there to do background checks on these people. The staffers have far too much power. Just like the unelected bureaucratic class, the deep state of the fourth branch of government has far more power than anybody else because they basically just slide under the radar. Nobody knows who these people are even.
Story. If you want my story, I'm going to give it to you. All right. So all these staffers are in there trying to get me to vote for the NDAA. I want to vote for the.
What the hell?
So I got a whole bunch of men trying to muscle me.
Who are these men?
I don't know their. All right. So all these staffers are in there trying to get me to vote for the NDAA. I want to vote for the NDAA. Section 219 is still in there. It's a big tech swap between us and Israel. We don't do that with anyone. I understand in the past, we've given them money for the Iron Dome, and then they get to keep the tech, and we don't get any of it back. So I understand that, but it's a big issue on the left and the right, and many of my constituents have reached out. They don't want this provision in the bill. Well, the White House doesn't want it in the bill. Secretary Hegseth doesn't want it in the bill. So I'm in the back waiting for a call from the secretary. I'm told that call is coming. I'm talking to someone underneath him, and I'm told the vote's going to stay open. They closed the vote. And so now I am forced to talk to TMZ. While I do have an issue that we talked about off record, I don't want to be on camera this week, and I've been on camera more than any other week. I am talking out of the side of my mouth like a damn politician, because my Botox hasn't caught up on this side. Maybe in 2 days, this side will catch up to the other side. But here.
All right. So what she said there is very important because I can't tell you how many people I have had message me or text me and say, Trump is trying to merge the Israeli and U.S. militaries. Boebert just said it. The two men in charge of the U.S. military, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, and the President of the United States do not want this provision in this bill. It may not be as drastic or dramatic as people are claiming it is, but I still think it's a bad deal for the United States of America. we can have technology and information sharing with other countries, but we don't have to specifically make a law cementing it into the fabric of American government. That to me is absolutely insane. And I also find it insane what she just said there, that we developed the Iron Dome and then we don't get the technology back. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is like, well, that some like intellectual brain drain that makes absolutely no sense at all. But it sounds like staffers kept her out of this vote so that she could not actually be there and have her name specifically on the paper of exactly what she was doing and what she supported. Now, the good news is that it is being reported that some Republican senators reportedly plan to vote against the NDAA until Section 219 is stripped. So just because it's passed through the House, it's not a foregone conclusion that it's going to go through the Senate. Maybe the Senate is actually going to do something good, despite the fact that they have systematically been unable to get anything passed for the longest time, unless it is something that is screwing over America. But like Lauren Boebert said, a lot of people on the left and the right both believe that this is not something the United States should have codified into our legislative laws. This bill that would integrate at any level technology and supply chains and decision making with a foreign government's military. No, bro, not into it. I'm not interested in this, and I don't think that most people are interested in it either. Now, take a look at this. My mom and her friend, Catherine, sent this over to me earlier today. This is a letter from Benjamin Netanyahu to Representative Stutzman. I believe Craig Stutzman is his name. Now, this whole plan is the brainchild of Benjamin Netanyahu, and it appears to be a trade-off. So, like he said previously, he wants to get Israel off of that $4 billion. I think that it is a PR nightmare for Israel. Nobody wants to just hand $4 billion over to any country, Israel, Colombia, or whomever it might be. And so people have a lot of negative feelings about Israel right now. And the $4 billion is sort of emblematic of, why that's a problem. We are having trouble taking care of our own stuff here at home. Why are we giving $4 billion to another nation, which, is giving free welfare to every single one of their citizens, free college, free healthcare, all of this stuff. So why are we paying for them to have a military? I don't think any nation on earth, if they can't survive without money from the United States, I don't think they should be an existing nation. I think that they should get their stuff together and they should figure out what they need to do differently. But Benjamin Netanyahu says in this letter, my plan to shift the framework of the U.S.-Israel defense cooperation from aid to partnership. So I am heartened by your enthusiastic support for our plan to develop a new memorandum of understanding with the United States government that will draw down U.S. financial military assistance over the next decade and replace it with what you refer to as a new framework of joint defense cooperation, co-development, cooperation, and mutual investment in areas including advanced missile defense, artificial intelligence, unmanned systems, cybersecurity, and the next generation military platforms. So, again, this seems to be giving another nation a backdoor into some of the most sensitive aspects of military and intelligence. Now, what people are saying, and I don't think this is right, even though I don't agree with the plan. The NDAA would completely integrate the Israeli military with the United States military, but not only that, it would create a new position titled Executive Agent who would be appointed by the Secretary of War, but not under the control of the Department of War. This executive agent is completely immune from congressional oversight. He is not bound by the U.S. Constitution. He is simply above the law and has total authority to deploy U.S. troops on the same level as POTUS. I have not seen that anywhere except from somebody on 4chan posting it in regards to this. So, I went out there looking and I'm like, what is this about an executive agent and this plan? Now, here is somebody who is pushing back on all of the narratives that people are saying this is going to merge the Israeli military and the U.S. military. His name is John Spencer. He's a war scholar, and he is somebody who writes about this on a regular basis. So he says, no, Section 219 does not merge the U.S. and Israeli militaries. It does not grant Israel access to U.S. intelligence, factories, or command structures. That is not how the U.S. military works in any way. It simply directs the Secretary of War to designate an executive agent to coordinate expanded bilateral defense technology cooperation in joint research and development, testing, integration, and industrial efforts in areas like AI, cyber, and missile defense. Read the bill text. It actually gives Congress more transparency and reports facts matter. Now, you have a slight portion of this right here where it does talk about the designation of that executive agent. This section would require the Secretary of Defense to designate an executive agent responsible for synchronizing cooperative efforts between the United States and Israel, including bilateral defense research, technology development, testing, evaluation, integration, and industrial cooperation. In no place in there does it say that the executive agent, who is merely a middleman between our two military forces and the, I guess, just the go-between to get this information. In no place in this NDAA does it say that this person is not accountable to the Secretary of War or the Department of War, or that they are extra constitutional or anything like that. And the concept of an executive agent is not something that's new. This is actually a position that's been around within the Department of War for quite some time. And it says here from America First Insight, DoD executive agents also do not have the authority to deploy troops. That is another very direct claim that was made in that 4chan post that I've seen people repeating. DoD executive agents are also obviously fully subject to congressional oversight. They can also be called in to testify. They are audited by the Department of Defense Inspector Generals. They are also subject to congressional oversight. Executive agents have been around since at least 1998. This was formally adopted in 2002, so it's not a new position. So, again, I think there's a lot of fog of war going on around the possibility of this happening. Even though I'm not into the idea of it, I still am going to call out disinformation when I see it. Okay, so and here on Bannon's War Room, we have Luke Nicastro. He is breaking down his position on this fusion, and he does fully believe that this would integrate the U.S. and Israeli militaries. Now, I'm not in the military, so I don't know how something like this normally works, but I do find it odd and unnecessary that Congress is pushing so hard for this, and I think it's good that we've got people in the Senate who are not looking to make it the law.
Sure. So basically, this is a provision that directs the creation of an official and an office and allocates resources for the merger of elements of the U.S. military establishment and the Israeli military establishment, right? The way that it's been kind of conventionally described in the press is as a merger of the U.S. and Israeli defense industrial bases. So essentially what the House is doing with this provision is creating a single official who is now tasked with taking all kinds of different kind of cooperative programs and efforts, whether it's technology, whether it's intel sharing, whether it's joint exercises, and basically fusing those with what the Israeli military does, the IDF does.
Well, hold it. Joint exercises. The industrial base is one thing. That's actually, we have many different companies working on air programs, missile programs, submarines, all the equipment that goes on Navy ships. I mean,
so that aspect of it is not unusual. I mean, we already do that with a number of other Western countries. We have a lot of nations that purchase weapons and missiles and equipment from us. But how deep is it going to go? That's the real question. And the bill does not explicitly state that. It leaves it open to interpretation, which makes it, of course, the worrisome aspect.
This is the equipment's kind of legion. Then you have information or intelligence sharing. Then you have like joint operations. Does this 219 incorporate all of that, or is it just? Don't get me wrong. It's the issue of merging the industrial bases is massive in and of itself. But are there other things other than the industrial bases? Is it intelligence, and is it joint operations?
So it's not like joint operational control, but it does make.
And that is highly, highly relevant right there, because what that means, it does not merge joint operational control. It means that Israel cannot call on U.S. soldiers to go invade another country. The United States can't call on the IDF to go do the same. And there's not going to be some person over and above the president or the Department of War saying, guess what, guys, suit up. It's time for the IDF to go take out some villages in Rafah.
Make provision for intelligence. It does make provision for information sharing. I mean, the thing to know is that we do a lot of this stuff already, right? The Pentagon already.
And that's the other part. A lot of this shit is already taking place.
Does a lot of cooperative work with Israel. The difference here is that you now have direction from the Congress saying, no, don't just do this, do more of it, right? And by putting it in statute, you make it extremely difficult to ever unwind.
Exactly.
Right? Because what they're doing right now is basically at the discretion of the president. I mean, historically, the Pentagon has been a little too comfortable kind of doing its own thing, and there's been sort of some kind of like what you could call deep state influences there. But
okay, and this is where my position lands. By putting it into law, the only way you can undo it is through another action of Congress. And considering what we know about the lobbying powers and the money that is already flowing into these congressional coffers, it seems highly unlikely that that would happen at any point in the future. The only people that I want to have control in any respect over actions of the U.S. military is the president and the Secretary of Defense. The only person that I want to have any say-so over the sharing of intelligence or the sharing of technology, any of that stuff, again, is the president and the Secretary of Defense. By making this an effort of Congress, in my opinion, you have the legislative branch stepping into the powers of the executive branch, and that is a muddying of the waters when we come to the separation of powers. Now, moving on from that, a war powers resolution, which was meant to essentially stop President Trump once again in Iran, has passed the House. However, it has failed in the Senate. So I think this is now like the third, fourth, or maybe even the fifth time that we are seeing this same effort from the House move into the Senate and then be stopped. So for all of the stuff that the Senate is not doing, it seems that they are, in one respect, the only ones who are standing between the ultimate destruction of the United States and the stopping of President Trump's overall plans. And so that is a good thing. Now, Speaker Johnson did, in fact, get the passage of the Save America Act provisions into the reconciliation bill. So this is 100% something that can be passed in the Senate with 50 votes and J.D. Vance. But again, the people that you're talking about convincing of this, it's like Tom Tillis, Murkowski, what's her name? I can't remember her other name. Anyways, you got like 4 Republicans who are just never going to do what the president wants them to do. So even though they have essentially pulled back the threshold of possibility, I don't know that it's even possible. But let's hear from Speaker Johnson.
And the budget resolution that unlocks our third reconciliation bill, which of course is Republicans' best shot to get as much of the Save America Act.
Thank you, Susan Collins. Yeah, Susan Collins. Yeah, Tillis, Murkowski, Collins, and then who's the other one? There's another one.
Into law as possible, in addition to funding our national defense and our farmers. Republicans support our troops, our farmers, and election security. We're the only team in Washington that does. Many of you doubted our success. Many of you standing around me in the Skaggle right now said, let me read you a sample of the headlines.
Well, don't pat yourself on the back yet, Mike. Just because you got something passed, it doesn't mean that you got anything done.
Quote, House Republicans
Cornyn, thank you.
Face final week gauntlet. Another said Johnson's rocky sprint to recess. Another said it was Johnson's make or break week.
Well, Mitch doesn't count. Mitch is, he's not there. He can't vote when he's not there. And Thune, I don't think that he wants to pass any aspect of the Save America Act. But by staying on the fence and acting like, I can't get the other people to vote for it, he doesn't have to come out and say it directly.
Despite nearly every Democrat voting against everything I just read you, House Republicans delivered. Now, many of you like to say that major legislating can't happen in an election year. We just proved you wrong. This week, we continue to deliver for the people, and we're going to continue that streak all the way through the end of this year and into the next Congress. We're increasingly confident that we will hold and grow this majority in the House. We must, because you're seeing a demonstration of the two sides, the divergent views for America.
Well, he's not wrong. The divergent sides are obviously going into wildly different directions. However, I think that, you know, obviously he's making a campaign speech at this time. He is essentially telling America that while you really should vote for Republicans, and I'm not going to vote for anybody else. You know how I feel. But unfortunately, what he's talking about is not doing anything to really move anything forward. It's a step. It's a step in the right direction. But until the Senate actually passes any of this stuff, it's a pipe dream. What's interesting is that John Thune continuously says that, we haven't scheduled the Save America Act. They haven't voted on like the 5 or 6 bills that the House has sent over, which contain provisions of the Save America Act. And yet they keep finding things to vote on. They voted against the War Powers Resolution. Cool. But why can't you vote on all these other things? Force it. Let's actually see what happens. Now, Caroline Leavitt, press secretary, obviously back from her maternity leave, held a press conference earlier today, and she directly said that President Trump is running out of patience with Senate Majority Leader John Thune. President Trump also brought this up last night in a rally as well. And he says that the repeated failures to terminate the Senate filibuster and pass the Save America Act are the reason. Now, Trump lit Senate Majority Leader Thune up last night at that rally in Georgia, and he said he wants every single person to call John Thune's office. He's the leader of the Republican Party. Tell him to get this stuff approved. I think that if you have a few minutes, it's not a bad idea. Call John Thune's office, leave a very cordial voicemail, and say, we want the passage of the Save America Act. Even, what's his name? Who's that blowhard Democrat? Oh God, what is his name? I can't remember his name. He is the guy who worked for Bill Clinton, and he is the Southerner who swears all the time, and he hates Donald Trump. Oh, why can't I remember his name? Anyways, he's telling Democrats now to vote for the Save America Act. He's like, it's over. You can't keep fighting them on this. 75% of America wants voter ID. Just go ahead and get it done. You look worse every single time. James Carville, thank you so much. I knew if I described him, then people would be able to say who he was. James Carville. No, Al Green is not going to come out in favor of the Save America Act. James Carville is definitely who I was thinking of. James Carville is saying Democrats need to support the Save America Act. We've reached a tipping point here in the United States, and it's basically John Thune is the only thing standing in the way. He said, I have to say Mike Johnson and Congress have done a great job, but we're having a hard time in the Senate. What they are doing, it's just not right. Congress is going to pass it again. They passed it 3 times. They're going to pass it again. It's like the Senate is a place you send things when you want to watch them die. Let's hear from... Well, actually, I think we can hear it from President Trump himself.
And finally, we have to pass the Save America Act to defend American elections.
I was reading a figure in Minnesota. Even in Minnesota, it's close to like 70% of Democrats that want voter ID passed. They want the Save America Act passed. This is overwhelmingly across the board a bipartisan issue, especially after the news about New Jersey.
And I have to say, Mike Johnson and Congress have done a great job, but we're having a hard time in the Senate. The Senate, what they're doing is just not right. Congress is going to pass it again. They passed it 3 times. They're going to pass it again. It's like the Senate is a place that you send things when you want them to die. We can't do this, and we're not going to take this any longer. We're not going to take it. I'm trying to be nice, trying to be really nice. You saw we had a big victory last night in Arizona. I've had victories everywhere. But we're not going to be able to take it much longer when they can't get past voter ID, proof of citizenship, no mail-in ballots because they're crooked as hell. So right now, Congress is working to get as much of our plan as possible into the budget bill to identify and really terminate. Look, what would
Now, the one thing that bothers me, and it's not President Trump that's doing it, it's Congress, is I've seen a couple of them say this. We're going to get as much as we can, which means that you're not going to get everything that you want. So if that means voter ID, okay, that's one aspect. Are they going to strip the provision for mail-in ballots out of the Save America Act stuff that they put in there? I mean, it seems to me that through budget reconciliation, they could tie the removal of mail-in ballots from the states and, you know, again, put some sort of grant funding attached to it so that people will be on hand to actually be able to handle the influx of in-person ballots. But anytime you hear that, we're going to do as much as we can, that means we're not going to do everything that we said.
they should do? Very simple. A lot of you don't know about filibuster. They should terminate the filibuster and approve everything. Because the Democrats are going to do it. The Democrats are going to terminate the filibuster as soon as they have a chance. And then they're going to approve Puerto Rico and D.C. as a state. They got 4 more senators. They're going to end up with 12 more congressmen. They're going to get at like 40 electoral votes. If they are allowed to do that, by that time I'll be sitting home. And I'm not a big crier. I don't think you want to see me cry, you know? There are some people, they do very well when they cry. But you don't want to see me cry. But I may be crying when I'll be sitting home and I'll say I told them. They got to really terminate the filibuster, get everything approved right away. Because
you know, the sad thing is I don't think that they're going to. So anyways, Caroline Leavitt was asked about John Thune and his inability to lead in the Senate. And she said, you know, the president spoke about this directly yesterday. He wants to see as much of this passed as America does before the August recess. He was just traveling, and he said this yesterday. He spoke with an audience, and he's running out of patience. Let's hear it. Okay. The lovely and vivacious Caroline Leavitt.
First question on, remind me?
Leader Thune, his patience is running out.
Look, the president spoke about this directly yesterday. His patience is running out. He wants to see as much of the Save America passed as possible by the August recess. He knows that's what the American people want to see passed. He was just traveling on the road yesterday, spoke about this, and there was a very loud applause from the people in the audience, the everyday Americans, because voter ID is common sense. They want proof of citizenship in our elections, and the president feels very strongly about that. And I would just add, you know, the American people elected overwhelmingly Republicans to lead not just this White House, but also the House and the Senate. The House did its job. The Senate needs to do its job too.
All right. Now, John Thune.
Zero all my sites without having to go to the range. This here is the Bohr laser zeroing kit from MCG.
I got to get past this. They won't let me pause the commercials. Okay, and I'm sorry, I didn't even see all of these chats coming in over here. So, first of all, TZ Burton says, voting matters. In Washington state, conservative Supreme Court Justice Dave Larson lost by less than 20,000 votes. During the last election, there were 635,000 undervotes. He could have won. I agree. And another reason that I think voting matters is because I know that they have loaded up the voting rolls with dead people and illegal aliens. And so, you know, this is why I think people have to get out and vote so that you can have your you can have your choice on the record. And that's the only way that we could potentially overwhelm the number of fake votes that they have out there. TZ Burton also says, in Washington state, the ballots have been sent. Glusenkamp Perez is losing in Washington 3 to Republican John Braun. That is great. Drop your mail-in ballot off at an official ballot drop box. Do it as soon as possible. I don't like the idea of mail-in voting, but I understand that's what Washington has. Principal Enigma says, how is this not a constitutional conflict of interest? This is not a good idea because Congress is basically passing the law. They are the ones who write the legislation. They can change things however they want to. It is totally unacceptable, though. It's Tony, man. Good to see you, buddy. He says, hey, Zach, happy Friday. That's all I got. And then he also says, let me try this again. Happy Thursday. You hear anything about Representative Ayanna Pressley? They found a dead body at her husband's yard. So, yes, I have heard that her husband owns a home, and it's a rental, and a young, I believe, 18-year-old girl was found dead there. The cause of death has not been released, but her family said that she is a victim of domestic violence. We don't know if there are any suspects in that death. We don't really know much of anything at all. They're kind of keeping it under wraps. I would imagine that's because they're doing an investigation right now. May also have something to do with the fact that Ayanna Pressley's convict husband is the owner of the home, but he wasn't like he was living there. From what I understand, he didn't have any personal association with that woman. Unless maybe she was like a sugar baby and he had her living at a house and then he was going to visit her. I don't know. Hopefully we'll find out. But it definitely stinks. What I'm more concerned about is her husband's multi-billion-dollar deal that his must have been, I think it was a $2 billion contract that his company got, and his company isn't even legally a company anymore. It was like dissolved last year or something like that. So there's a whole bunch of inappropriate things happening in the Presley household. But yeah, tragic that young girl died. All right, so John Thune responded. And he said, well, maybe she or somebody else ought to get on the phone and get the votes right. It's 50 around here. And so instead of, pointing the finger at Republicans, you might want to think about going after the people who are stopping it on the floor, which is the Democrats. And if there are Republicans that they think are gettable, get on the phone. And President Trump previously said that Thune was playing it too soft, but he has been very patient. I think he's been far more patient than I think anybody else would have been. And it seems like the one job that the leader of the Senate has, which is to get the votes, is not something that John Thune wants to do. All right, now, let's talk about Caroline Leavitt once again, because she was also asked to comment on the situation in New Jersey, because this is, of course, very, very juicy.
Said that election officials that knowingly allowed non-citizens to vote could be prosecuted and fined. Is this option being considered in New Jersey after the governor revealed that thousands of non-citizens were registered to vote there?
Well, for any prosecutions, obviously, I would always defer you to the Department of Justice. But what I will say on New Jersey and this governor, the fact that she just all of a sudden decided to put out a press release saying President Trump and Republicans have been right about non-citizens on our voting rolls is not a coincidence. I think this governor is saying this because she realizes this administration is serious about getting to the bottom of illegal aliens voting and being on our voter rolls in our country. The Secretary of Homeland Security, as you know, sent a letter to several states, including New Jersey, requesting that non-citizens that are on their voter rolls need to be reported to DHS and need to be removed from those voter rolls. So that's why all of a sudden she is speaking truth about the fact that this does take place in states across the country. It is completely unacceptable to have non-citizens on American voter rolls voting in U.S. elections. And she says it's 6,600. We suspect it's a heck of a lot more, not just in New Jersey, but in states across the country. The president is hell-bent on getting to the bottom of this, and it's also why we need to pass the Save America Act to ensure that only U.S. citizens are voting in U.S. elections. And I understand the House had a great accomplishment yesterday with passing.
Yeah, obviously passing it in reconciliation. Independence over on YouTube says, I have not read the Save America Act. Have you read it? With double question marks. I don't know if you're insinuating anything, but yes, I have. Here is the text of the Save America Act. I just put it into the chat over there. Also, thank you to Sean Joe for 2 cans. Thank you to Empress for 116 gold pills. And thank you to Filter Dog. I think he might have dropped the James Carville clip that I was referencing, so let me pull that up. Yes, and I think that also this may have something to do with why James Carville has changed his mind on voter ID, because all of these Democrats in the states where we know illegal aliens are on the rolls and we know that they have voted, they're all in criminal jeopardy. The question is, are they going to be willing to continue to remain in criminal jeopardy just so that they can stand in the way of President Trump's agenda? The agenda for President Trump is the agenda for America. Now, I won't make you listen to all of James Carville's comments, but we will hear just the pertinent part.
If we're not better off, said, okay, we'll take that alternative ID, bring your gas bill or your light bill or something. Because for whatever reason, this shit polls at 75%. It doesn't make, I don't think people are aware of it. I think people assume that voter fraud happened. Again, I don't even want to say if you want to say infinitesimal, I don't know if I could think of a word that would be even narrower than that. I would say that. And I don't like when we say, well, look, it's a very minor problem, but you got to admit it barely exists. And it doesn't make any sense. Having said that, we are not going to win the war against some kind of ID. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't fix anything, but maybe you just go along with it and move to the next thing.
James, okay, so that's basically it. James Carville understands that this is an unwinnable war. We're not going to let this go. And I think the majority of America is not going to let this go either, because it is highly, highly consequential to the future of this country. Now, let's talk about something that the Senate is doing that's good. Senator Tim Sheehy is introducing legislation today that will suspend new H-1B visas for the next 3 years. Now, in 3 years, it would resume the program, and it would put a $25,000 annual cap on visa subjects. Now, right now, it's about 60,000, if I'm not mistaken, but as I've reported before, colleges and universities have no cap on the number of H-1B visa applicants they can come and work at their universities. There would also be a floor on the wages, a $200,000 salary for H-1B visa holders. There would also be additional restrictions that would be aimed entirely at protecting American workers and addressing fraud and national security concerns. So this legislation would make changes that extend far beyond H-1B itself. It would also include eliminating employment authorization for certain foreign students and exchange visitors, generally would prevent non-immigrants and others with temporary authorized presence from adjusting to permanent resident status while they're in the United States. A lot of the times what we see is people will come here on one type of a visa. They will enter under, a certain circumstance, and then they will switch it up once they get here and then convert it into something else. That's definitely got to stop. It would also prohibit federal agencies from employing non-immigrants directly or through contracts. Good. The federal government should not be hiring anybody but American citizens. It would also bar changes from one non-immigrant classification to another. So the bill text has been released in a press release and a one-page summary that were shared with Breitbart. The H-1B visa program was created to address workforce shortages for specialized, difficult-to-fill positions, not to displace qualified, hardworking Americans with cheaper foreign labor. And that's exactly what it does right now. But H-1B is only one part of the problem. There are a number of different visa classifications which allow this exact same thing to happen. So although I am in favor of addressing H-1B, I think that the visa programs that we have currently in effect in the United States are all flawed, and they all need to be readdressed. Sheehy continued by saying, we should not be issuing work permits that make it easier to undercut American workers when we have the talent right here at home. My legislation, the End H-1B Abuse Act, restores the program to its original intent and puts American workers first by closing loopholes that incentivize abuse, strengthening guardrails, and prioritizing our national security interests. You take a look at certain American companies that have a habit of doing this. Frankly, there are a lot of American companies that in the last 10 years have recently had Indian immigrant CEOs rise to that position. And what do? They lay off thousands of Americans from their jobs, and then they replace them with H-1B visa holders. That is something that cannot continue to happen. I think that we should, if we're going to legislate anything, I think that you should have a mandatory percentage of your employees. You're an American company, then you have a mandatory percentage of Americans at a minimum that make up your workforce. Give these companies no excuse to get rid of Americans and to bring in foreign labor. The bill would suspend the issuance of H-1Bs for 3 years. And then again, after that, we would put in those caps and that wage cap, and it would reduce the maximum H-1B period from 6 years to 3 years. And it would require employers to attest that qualified American workers are unavailable. It already does that, so I don't know how they're going to make sure that it is being done in this newest version of the bill. It would also require them to attest that hiring the visa holder would not adversely affect the wages or working conditions of similarly employed U.S. workers, and that the employer had not laid off workers during the preceding 12 months and would not be doing so during the 12 months following the application. That right there is key because, as I said, Microsoft just laid off nearly 6,000 workers, and then they're replacing them with like 4,000 or 5,000 H-1B holders. Employers would have to offer H-1B workers at least $200,000 annually, plus they would still have to pay that $100,000 fee for petitions simply seeking initial H-1B status or authorization for an H-1B worker to change employers. Another problem that we have right now is that people will get an H-1B visa for one company, and then they get here, and then they just switch to another employer because they never intended to work for that company at all. As we've seen in the past, you have these H-1B mills that operate out of places like Texas. They will have fraudulent companies that they secure H-1B visas for a foreign worker, and then they get here and that company doesn't exist, and then they have them go do something else. Those people might end up essentially in a slave labor position as well. He continues here. The legislation would also revise the definition of an H-1B dependent employer. It would end dual intent for H-1B visa holders. It would prohibit concurrent H-1B employment, and it would bar third-party staffing agencies from sponsoring H-1B workers or facilitating their recruitment or employment on behalf of other employers. All of this stuff is wonderful, top-notch. This is definitely the type of reform that we need for H-1B. It would remove the statutory provision allowing spouses and minor children of H visa holders to accompany or follow them, and prohibit federal agencies from petitioning for or employing non-immigrants either directly or through contractors. This is another key thing. You do not want these people to come here and then bring their kids and their families and then have anchor babies here and then create an excuse as to why they need to stick around. If an H-1B visa is meant to be a temporary solution so that Americans can be trained and then brought into the workforce, you're not going to do that when you allow these people to bring their families in and allow them to set down roots. Now, I also think that there should be a provision that people who are H-1B visa holders should not be allowed to apply for American citizenship. There should be some type of moratorium on that. Because, if they're coming here with the intention of staying forever and they come on an H-1B visa, that means that they're doing it under false circumstances. Now, beyond the H-1B program, and this is the other aspect that I mentioned at the start of this story, the bill would eliminate employment authorization for F1 and M1 foreign students and for J1 exchange visitors admitted to attend educational or training institutions. It would generally prevent non-immigrants, parolees, and others with temporary authorized presence from adjusting to permanent residence while inside the United States and prohibit changes from one non-immigrant classification to another. Now, the changes that were recently made to the H-1B visas forces some of these people, forces H-1B holders to go back to their home country and then petition for the reauthorization of their H-1Bs. And for a lot of those people, that just simply wasn't worth it. They ended up going back to India or Sri Lanka or wherever, and then they end up having to stay there. The adjustment of status restrictions contain limited exceptions for people who are otherwise eligible for an available immigrant visa and who filed for adjustment before enactment and have their application adjudicated within 1 year, as well as refugees, people who applied for asylum before the enactment and have their application adjudicated within 1 year, and conditional permanent residents. So this one-page summary that Sheehy put out states that the H-1B program has strayed far from its original purpose as this narrow short-term permit for hard-to-fill roles. and now it functions as basically a catch-all, a large-scale labor substitution pipeline. It says waves of layoffs have coincided with sustained or increased H-1B hiring, and it cites particularly egregious cases where workers were allegedly forced to train their replacements before being terminated. That is a story that I have heard over and over and over again, and it's not recent. This has been over the years. It happens all the time. The summary also argues that the concentration of foreign contract workers in artificial intelligence, cloud infrastructure, and defense-adjacent industries clearly raises some serious concerns about data security, insider risk, and foreign influence. You can say that about China. You can say that about India. You can say that about Israel, any of these nations that would like to have some edge when dealing with the United States. If they have their people in these defense-adjacent or contractor-type positions, that is a major, major problem. We simply cannot have that. Now, this month, J.D. Vance announced that the Department of Labor had launched dozens of subpoenas and investigations into the subject of H-1B fraud. The department's Office of Inspector General also said they were intensifying enforcement involving the H-1B program and the electronic review management systems because we've had a whole load of fraudulent applications. There have been a bunch of schemes like coercive wage kickback arrangements, exploitation of workers, essentially slave labor conditions, and a number of other schemes that undercut American workers with below-wage labor. J.D. Vance also said the H-1B program was initially intended to bring highly skilled specialists to the United States, but it's obviously being abused by corporations and overseas fraudsters who use it to undercut American workers' wages, declaring that American jobs ought to go to American workers and not foreign fraudsters. The department also began encouraging American and foreign workers to report suspected displacement, coercion, fraudulent recruitment, and forced labor. Now, Sheehy has finally previously emphasized that he supports legal immigration while opposing abuses of the immigration system. And during a February policy event, he said the United States should welcome good, smart, hardworking people who come to America to build business and contribute to the country. But he also says the United States should support immigrants who share American values while rejecting people who steal government funds or act as agents of foreign governments. And it seems that there are plenty of them that we need to get rid of. All right. A boneless chicken. Thank you for the phone over on Pilled. I appreciate that. All right. Now, I mentioned a couple of stories ago the problems that we have with staffers in both the House and the Senate. Since Mitch McConnell has been out of the office for the better part of 5 or 6 weeks, Keith Edwards on X posted that his senior staff is obviously the ones who are running his office. You pay their salaries. You're entitled to know who they are. Well, let's meet them. We have Terry Carmack. He is McConnell's chief of staff. You can reach him at Terry_Carmack at mcconnell.senate.gov. You have Robert Sturrer, the communications director, probably the one putting out the alleged statements by Mitch McConnell and his wife. And he is available at Robert_Sturrer. Melissa Bennett, the director of operations, available at Melissa_Bennett. David Popp, the senior advisor to McConnell, David_Popp. And then Dylan Vorbach, another senior advisor, Dylan_Vorbach. Now, what's funny about this is that Keith says, Mitch McConnell's team reached out to me earlier today, through an intermediary, of course, and they asked me to take this down. I won't. I don't bend the knee, and if they don't like having their name and face attached to it, maybe they should ask themselves why that is. Yes, there's no reason that these so-called civil servants shouldn't be public figures working in the halls of government, the annals of government. These people should be those that you know their names and their faces. This is, again, a big problem. Every single congressman, every single senator should have at least, at a minimum, a spot on their official website that lists and shows every single one of their staffers and details the work that they do inside that office, because this is very important information. All right. Now, another issue that is coming out of the House, Republican Georgia Representative Rich McCormick on earlier today, introduced a bill that seeks to ban birth tourism in the United States, something that should have been done a long time ago. This is a companion bill to Republican Tennessee Senator Marsha Blackburn's Ban Birth Terrorism Act of 2026, which together seek to end the practice of having foreign nationals travel to the United States and give birth here so that their kids can then obtain birthright citizenship. The legislation follows the Supreme Court's decision, which blocked President Trump's executive order banning it outright. Now, the legislation intends to close a loophole in immigration law by preventing foreign nationals from traveling to the United States for the express purpose of giving birth. The children of these foreign nationals automatically become U.S. citizens because the Supreme Court is weak and doesn't understand the intention of the 14th Amendment. I am proud to join Senator Blackburn in introducing the House companion to the Ban Birth Tourism Act of 2026. So now, because you have a bill in both the House and the Senate, it makes it more likely that they're going to be able to get them passed in an urgent fashion. I urge my colleagues to stand with us in protecting the integrity of American citizenship and restoring confidence in our immigration system. Now, both of these bills intend to amend the Immigration and Nationality Act to make it clear that any alien seeking admission to the United States for the primary purpose of obtaining citizenship for a child by giving birth in the United States is inadmissible. That means that those people would simply not be allowed to come into the country, and I would hope for the people who do come here illegally, it would also address that as well. The bills would also make birth tourism a conduct that constitutes a deportable offense. What about a criminal offense? That's what it should be. American citizenship is one of the greatest privileges in the world. It should not be bought as a product, exploited through a loophole, or handed out to foreign nationals who fly here solely to give birth and return home. Every year, roughly 33,000 children are born in the United States as a result of birth tourism, many of whom are coached by businesses on how to deceive immigration officials. This is not a legal gray area. It is fraud, and it has gone on for far too long. I think that we've talked about a number of different things that I have suggested here before. I think that if you're going to be coming to the United States and you're a woman, you should take a pregnancy test. I think if you're pregnant and you plan to come to the United States, you must sign an affidavit waiving any claim to citizenship for that child should they happen to be born here. I think that if you're coming to the United States and you're pregnant, maybe, and under certain circumstances from certain high-risk countries, they just shouldn't let you in at all. Clearly, this bill doesn't sound like it addresses the issue of those who are here illegally having those children. I think that you should also have in the Immigration and Nationalization Act, anybody who does not come to this country legally is considered to be a criminal, and so therefore is going to waive any right to any potential citizenship that a child might gain as a result of having a dirt baby in the Texas desert. All right, now let us jump into the subject of New Jersey, because as you know, New Jersey is not an isolated case. With the press conference that Governor Mickey Sherrill had, she, of course, claims that this was a serious software error, a glitch, if you will, in the state's motor vehicle system, which allowed these thousands of foreign nationals to register to vote. Now, she only points to 2023 to 2024, but as I showed you, there have been at least anecdotal reports of this happening as far back as 2014. This, of course, coincidentally occurred right at the outset of the 2024 election campaign when Sherrill herself was crowned the winner, and a lot of people have questions about that election as well. So what's going on with the other states? I mean, we had the letters that were sent to not only New Jersey, but to California, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. So far, we've heard nary a peep from any of those other three states. And considering the fact that those were the only four states that were looked at, I sure hope that DHS and the DOJ currently is doing what they can to verify the existence of foreign nationals in the rest of the 46 states so that they can identify them and send letters out to them as well, because they will all be criminally liable if we find that these people are voting, and I believe we already believe that they are. Now, New Jersey is one of the many states that does not use the free federal save system so that they can check to see if illegals are on their voter rolls. Maybe now that will change because of how big of a deal this is turning into. But the SAVE system, it's an online program administered by the U.S. Customs, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, and it provides immigration status and U.S. citizenship information, and it only returns verification information. So the decision to register or remove a voter continues to remain with state or local election officials. I think that's a problem. I think that if a person comes back as being an illegal alien or not being a citizen, it should be an immediate flag on any files in any system that that person is connected to. So we have still 26 states as of June 30th that are using SAVE for voter registration as a voter list maintenance purpose. And so perhaps those 26 states are going to find themselves outside of any legal culpability because the federal government already has the information that they need there. But in 2025, they processed 198 million cases. We're supposed to have 320 million people total in the United States of America. So that really gives me pause to hear that 26 states processed 128 million cases. That, to me, sounds like we've got far more than 320 million people here total. Now, those remaining 24 states have no public info that their election authority uses. They don't use SAVE, and most of those 24 states are left-leaning. Not all of them, but most of them. Texas, you would think, would be one of those states that would actually be down with using this. But the 24 states that are not using it, so Texas is a state that uses, that does use SAVE. Okay. Now, these are the ones that, so this is like so you've got statutory authorization. The state using SAVE is specifically authorized by law. Texas uses it voluntarily. That's what my confusion was. Okay. So Alaska, California, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Minnesota, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, Nevada, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Vermont, Washington, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. Those are the states that do not use it. But New Jersey does use ERIC. We touched on that the other day. We have spoken about it in the past. ERIC is a nonprofit that is, in my opinion, it is far more dangerous to have a non-public organization that has no real need to have access to our information other than for the purposes of potentially committing mass fraud. In 2022, they allegedly helped New Jersey clean up their voter rolls. Well, that's interesting because it was after 2022 that Governor Sherrill says the 6,600 illegal aliens were then added to the voter rolls. ERIC is not a good organization. If you see ERIC operating in a state, well, it's almost 100% assured that that is being used as a tool to see just how many ballots could potentially be added to the totals after they determine exactly how many they need to crown a winner. New Jersey, again, is not alone. You've got several states that have already been in this situation, and they've used the excuse of a glitch. So some of these we've talked about before, and the state of New Jersey uses IDEMIA. They were the ones who got blamed. They're a French country, but they do have headquarters in the United States in Reston, Virginia. They've got 1,300 employees with 35 states as driver's license customers. They've also supplied 22 states with TSA pre-check services. If the software was the problem, well, then mass immigration would likely be an issue in other states, but it doesn't seem like it is. And the denial from IDEMIA purposefully overlooking the registration of illegal aliens, they say it is 100% New Jersey that is the one who is doing this. Now, a major goal that the left has is 100% automatic voter registration for every citizen, they say. But, of course, in a state that gives driver's licenses to non-citizens, it ends up being 100% voter registration for every single person who gets a driver's license. And it was the Democrats who pushed the motor voter law, which was part of the 1993 National Voter Registration Act, which allows for voter registration at DMVs. They have positioned themselves around motor vehicle MVAs, motor vehicle assistance, DMVs, ever since. And that's because a lot of these policies about voting center around registration systems that are at the DMV. Over 24 states have some form of automatic voter registration unless you opt out, and that is clearly one of the ways that they are getting as many people registered to vote as possible. But there are 6 other states where the DMV has already been caught including non-citizens on voter rolls, and these states should not surprise you. One of them, two of them are ones that got letters from the Department of Homeland Security. Oregon, Pennsylvania, Illinois, California, Vermont, and Nevada. In Oregon, in 2019, their motor voter program mistakenly registered hundreds of non-citizens after so-called DMV clerical errors incorrectly marked their citizenship status as yes. In Pennsylvania, on multiple occasions, they have acknowledged that some non-citizens have been registered through DMV transactions because of errors involving driver's license and identification records. In Illinois, in both 2018 and 2019, the Secretary of State reported that automatic voter registration implementation resulted in hundreds of non-citizens being improperly registered because of programming and processing errors. In California in 2018, probably continuing to this day, their DMV-based AVR system experienced widespread implementation problems, which included things like duplicate registrations, erroneous registrations, and a number of other processing errors. In 2019 in Vermont, officials identified a small number, they said, of non-citizens who have been automatically registered because of, again, so-called DMV data errors. And in 2020 and 2021, after they started doing the automatic registration in Nevada, election officials reported another small number of ineligible registrations that were tied to DMV processing errors. The answer to this is clear. Automatic voter registration is not something that we should be doing at all. This should be completely outlawed. It should be stripped as a provision from the National Voter Registration Act. If people want to vote, then they should be able to go out and do it on their own. Nobody should be automatically registered to vote. And certainly in states where where the government is giving driver's licenses to people who are non-citizens, to people who are illegal aliens, those should be paramount, first and foremost, stopped there and not allowed to continue. But what does this show us? There is a clear pattern of abuse. States where this is a process, illegal aliens and non-citizens get on the voter rolls, and although small numbers are being reported, the true numbers are probably far, far worse. All right. Now, on August 7th in Colombia, the new president is set to be sworn in a process known as empalme. But there is a challenge, and we've spoken about the current president, Gustavo Petro, and his challenge to this election. Now, he was not on the ballot in this election because he's limited by terms. However, he is challenging this runoff victory for the upcoming presidential inauguration by Abelardo de la Espriella. So on July 17th, Petro actually sued in Colombia's Council of State, sitting as its administrative chamber's fifth session. According to his contest, after translating it into English, Gustavo Petro is arguing that election authorities significantly reduced transparency and technical safeguards that were previously used to authenticate and verify official election documents. It's interesting. A lot of the problems that Petro is claiming exist in the Colombian election are problems we've also argued are happening here in the United States as well. Now, E14s are polling station documents. They are documents that determine, that show exactly who's coming into the polling stations, what the votes are, at what times, what the counts are. And they are no longer including metadata, which means that, well, how can you guarantee that E14 was from that polling station at that particular time? There's also no timestamps on these things. There are no document identifiers, and there's no other digital features that allow for independent verification. So these E14s in this election are just based on trust me, bro. Gustavo Petro has asked the court to compel the production of records, which would include logs, hash values, version histories, protocols, and other system documentation so that they could determine whether the changes were properly authorized and whether they impaired the verifiability of this election. Now, Petro is also seeking the invalidation of the official results, or alternatively, He's calling for a new canvass or a judicial audit, a forensic inspection of the election systems, production of technical evidence, and targeted recounts or corrections where the court finds the results cannot be independently verified. Now, when we talked about this last month, immediately after the runoff, Petro went on Twitter and he began to call these results of this election into question. And in many of those posts, he seems to give some pretty compelling documentation of why this needs to be looked into. In a particular post, he claimed that 177,000 votes in favor of Abelardo came from overseas voters, especially in the United States. Well, are those Cuban citizens that were living in the United States, or were those votes that were injected into the system? I can't tell you either one way or the other, but he's making a claim that I think should be addressed. Now, more recently, he took to X once again to claim that he doesn't say who they is, but he says they took down pages where he had actually posted evidence of algorithmic electoral fraud that was carried out in the United States. In a video that he put out in June, he claimed that the Batista Brothers software, as of the 2018 Council of State ruling stated, so these are guys from Colombia, is vulnerable to internal and external actions against the vote. Now, this video purports to show, again, hash files being altered, and we can actually take a look at the video with English subtitles, and we're going to do that. And again, this is from my good friend Brian Lupo at the Gateway Pundit. Okay, so
En este video les voy a mostrar.
I got to turn the volume down because I'm going to translate. So he says, in this video, I'm going to show you how, when downloading the E14s from the registrar's website, the hash locks are changed. So here are several documents we found with irregularities. And in case you're listening to the audio version, on screen, he's got dozens and dozens of these files. But I'm going to give you the example of just one, because it has already been modified. When it was downloaded, we realized that the hash lock had been modified. So I'm going to show the first one I downloaded at 6 p.m. Look at the document name, letters and numbers. Let's double click it. And here, what can we see? Well, the registrar's office is reporting a non-digitized page. And so on the second page, it shows us the signatures. This is the first document I downloaded. The second document, which was when I logged in again to the delegates E14, the option that appears on the registrar's website, I downloaded this to the folder called Revision. So you can see that the letters and numbers appear, but it has exactly the same initial name. Okay, so two files, two different times they're downloaded. And you can compare them. What's the difference? Well, we are going to double click it, and abracadabra, now the votes have indeed appeared with the signatures. This time the signatures are there. The ones now initially seen, as you can see here. But the only difference is the second document downloaded, in fact, at 8:42 p.m. just a few minutes ago. Okay, so his claim is that this one document, which should have remained static, was different at two different times. Obviously, that seems to indicate that somebody is altering these documents in the meantime as he's attempting to demonstrate this evidence. Now, last week, the State Department released a statement by the members of the Shield of Americas. This is where they said it's deeply concerning and you need to recognize the rule of law and the choices of the Colombian people. They wanted to vote for this guy, so you need to basically let him become the president. But for all intents and purposes, it seems that Colombia is raising questions about the legitimacy of their election system as it relates to these oblique electronic voting systems that you can't look into and that apparently even the president of Colombia is unable to raise any questions about. It sounds very familiar. Very familiar. Now, I don't know that this guy had the election stolen for him or that he had anything to do with it, But in the same way, I am interested in election security here in the United States. If somebody makes a claim, then I think that it deserves to be investigated. And who knows, perhaps this is going to lead to some new information. Now, the software that he is referencing here has a direct connection, once again, to Smartmatic, which makes it all the more interesting that I think it needs to be investigated. Thank you to Sean Joe for the can, and thank you to Boneless Chicken for the phone. I appreciate that. Yeah, whoever runs the machine runs the world. Whoever counts the votes is the most powerful. All right, so let's talk about Jack Smith. Fake, lying, fake special prosecutor Jack Smith. So Chairman Jim Jordan has referred former special counsel Jack Smith to the Department of Justice for criminal prosecution because the evidence appears to show that Smith knowingly made false statements while testifying under oath before the committee. We know this. We saw it firsthand, and the evidence that has come out since his testimony seems to indicate that, yes, he did commit perjury. So Jim Jordan is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, and this special counsel referral was produced late yesterday. And Jim Jordan alleges that Smith lied to Congress about his team's access to the contents of private text messages of over 40 lawmakers. Now, the referral accuses Smith of lying to Congress last year when he testified that the, quote, toll records or telephone records his team requested for members of Congress did not include the content of those messages. Turns out it did. It also accuses Smith of lying when he was asked if he ever subpoenaed the text messages of Congress. So there are two different ways that Jack Smith has been shown to have lied before a committee in the House Judiciary Committee while he was under oath. This information calls into question the completeness and accuracy of statements that Mr. Smith made under oath to the committee regarding his team's access to the content of members' text messages, Jordan wrote in the referral. Ranking member Jamie Raskin, of course a Democrat, also an attorney and previously a law professor, accused Jim Jordan of distorting the facts, stating that Smith compelled the National Archives to produce White House records, which included the text messages, but did not subpoena the phone records, and therefore the testimony was accurate. Hold on just a second. Jack Smith was asked when he testified that the toll records did not contain those messages. Also, he was asked if he ever subpoenaed the text messages. Okay, so Raskin is saying, well, he received the text messages, but he didn't actually subpoena the text messages, so technically he didn't lie. Well, Raskin said with today's referral of Jack Smith to the DOJ, Chairman Jordan and his Republican Congress have embarrassed themselves again in this investigation. Jack Smith was clear and consistent in his testimony, and he told the truth. When asked if his subpoena for members' toll records sought the content of either member's phone calls or messages, he truthfully replied they did not. That statement was true when he said it, and it is true today. Now, Raskin claims Republicans never asked Smith about whether he had reviewed the text messages and accused Republicans of being upset that they did not think to ask different questions regarding the phone records of lawmakers. Wishing that you had asked different questions while you had the opportunity to examine a witness is not a proper basis for a referral of a witness for criminal prosecution. The Republicans fault Mr. Smith for not reading the minds of congressional investigators and for not volunteering information they didn't ask for. This is absurd. Mr. Smith may be telegenic, but he's not telepathic. Well, the fact of the matter is this has now been sent to Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. They will decide whether or not Jack Smith lied. Hopefully it will go before a grand jury. If there is a possibility of getting him under indictment for anything, I hope that it happens. I would love to see it. Now, let's take a look specifically at the letter. So during the deposition on December 17th, the committee advised Mr. Smith he was obliged to provide all necessary information that would make his responses truthful and to avoid half-truths or incomplete answers. That's, I think, where they get him and they get Jamie Raskin. The committee questioned Mr. Smith about the toll record subpoenas relating to the private records of members of Congress. The committee sought to understand in particular whether Mr. Smith or members of his team ever received or reviewed the content of members' communications. During his deposition, Mr. Smith testified he did not receive the contents of members' text messages. So the question was, did you seek a search warrant for the content of any text messages from members? From members? Yes, from members. No, I don't recall that. Okay, it was just toll records? Correct. Did the toll records that you requested from the senators, did they contain the content of the phone calls? Jack Smith said no. Did the records you requested, the toll records from the members of Congress, include the content of text messages? And Jack Smith once again said no. So I think Jamie Raskin is 100% wrong here. The responses provided by Mr. Smith gave the impression that neither he nor his team had access at any time to the content of those privileged text messages. And we now know this to be false. So Jack Smith 100% had access, and there's no way that he and his team got those messages and didn't review them. So under 18 U.S.C. 1001, a witness commits a crime if that witness knowingly and willfully makes any material, false, fictitious, or fraudulent statements or representation with respect to any investigation under review conducted pursuant to the authority of any committee of Congress. Congress cannot perform their oversight function if witnesses who appear before this committee do not provide truthful testimony. False statements before Congress are crimes that undermine the integrity of the constitutional duty to conduct oversight. New information obtained by this committee reveals Mr. Smith likely circumvented key constitutional protections, including the speech or debate clause, to spy on members of Congress. On July 14th, DOJ produced documents to the committee revealing that Mr. Smith's team obtained text messages of 44 members of Congress, including both Republicans and Democrats in both chambers of Congress, that may have included privileged content. This information calls into question the completeness and accuracy of statements Mr. Smith made under oath to the committee regarding the team's access to content of members' text messages. Yes, it does. So this new information showed that Smith's team likely violated the DOJ's own internal policy and obtained text messages between members of Congress and the executive branch officials that may have included privileged content without any screening by a filter team for privilege purposes. The filter team procedures state that no material shall be disclosed to the investigative team without approval of a filter team attorney. But despite this, on August 31st, 2023, Senior Assistant Special Counsel Thomas Windham received an email from the General Counsel of the National Archives and Records Administration in reference to the Special Counsel's June 2023 request to produce presidential records of the Trump administration. So they sent spreadsheets containing the requested custodian's text messages from White House phones, and then Windham reviewed those text messages and proceeded to forward the content of the text messages to fellow prosecutors on the investigative team. Windham, as a member of Smith's team, should not have had access to the content of those messages until they were reviewed by the filter team. So again, because these were members of Congress who were being spied upon, I think that they are going to be far more likely to push this as deeply as it can possibly go to ensure that Jack Smith or his team will be indicted. Because again, when things affect members of Congress, they tend to take it a lot more seriously. All right. Now, President Trump earlier today had made some remarks during an event with the Environmental Protection Agency. He was making an announcement on his pledge to protect Americans from paying higher utility bills as a result of AI data centers. Now, President Trump had previously signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge at a White House event with top administration officials and leading AI and technology companies. And his announcement and event today really was solidifying those specifics. Let's take a listen to President Trump's opening remarks after we get past this commercial.
This afternoon for a historic signing that will help keep down utility bills very, very substantially and electricity prices for millions of Americans and in many cases for a lot of people that don't really understand why they're going up, but they're not going to be going up. They're going to be actually going down. Today we follow through on an announcement I made in my State of the Union address last week as America's largest tech companies officially signed the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. It's a big deal. It's going to have a tremendous impact on electricity costs. We're bringing down all of the costs. We have this little interlude to do what we have to do because we had it going, but these interludes are very important, especially this one. But the economy has never been like this. We broke 50,000 on the Dow. People thought we wouldn't do that within the first 4 years. We did it in the first year. And we brought 7 on the S&P, 7,000 on the S&P. They said that's even less likely to happen. And we did that too, all within the first year. Under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers, and that would be prices for American communities will not go up, but in many cases will actually come down and very substantially.
Now, here's the thing. If you, as a private citizen, build a home and you want to be connected to the grid, you have to pay for the privilege of doing that. It's always shocked my conscience that companies would expect municipalities and local areas, which means the citizens who live there, would be the ones who have to pick up the bill for that. So when President Trump first announced this, I was very, very happy about this because this, in my mind, definitely addresses one of the major concerns that people have about these AI data centers. Not all of them, but certainly the one that's going to hit you directly in the pocketbook. The other that we've talked about on the show before is the issue of water usage and contamination. That is another issue, and that also still needs to be addressed. But President Trump, in this latest announcement today, he met with some of these AI companies, and they further solidified the position that they have. Now, here is Caroline Leavitt as well from today's press conference, where she also addressed what President Trump was doing.
Finally, on the energy front, after this briefing, President Trump will participate in a historic Ratepayer Protection Pledge event at the EPA headquarters down the street. The president will expand the Ratepayer Protection Pledge to governors, state legislatures, developers, and power providers to ensure that everyone involved in building and powering data centers pays their own way, instead of passing those costs on to hardworking families. The president will be joined by Energy Secretary Chris Wright, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, and several governors who have already signed on to this pledge. And it has already proven to be remarkably successful. Nearly 200 additional stakeholders have signed on since it was first announced, including utilities, data center developers, public power authorities, co-ops, and state governors. As a result, the pledge now covers 80% of all the power delivered to American homes and businesses. President Trump's bold leadership is turning data centers from a source of concern into engines of growth and opportunity for communities across this country, all while cementing America's dominance over China in the global AI race. The president is ensuring the American people are never left footing the bill so private companies can benefit. Instead, President Trump is leveraging the data center boom to deliver real, tangible benefits for working families and small businesses.
Now, the 20% that is not covered, I wonder if that is people who live in areas where data centers were already built before President Trump struck this agreement. Now, here, this is actually at the signing of this event with the stakeholders, and President Trump, again, addressing the issue.
We know that the data centers and AI are dramatically increasing the demand for electricity. It's only fair that the cost of building the new infrastructure required to meet this demand should be borne by the corporations themselves, not by the American consumers and the American patriots, American citizens. And I think everybody agrees to it. And actually, they really don't have a choice because there's no way of producing that kind of electricity, the kind you need. And they want to do it themselves. And honestly, they're coming up with some plans that are genius, just like they are. That's why earlier this year I introduced the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. Under this groundbreaking plan, America's largest tech companies have formally committed to fund or build all energy infrastructure required to meet the demand they are placing on the grid. So they're going to be funding all of those electric needs, and we're giving them the right to build their own power plants. Lee Zeldin is here. He's phenomenal.
Now, this, to me, is the most sensible thing you can do. You can have small nuclear reactors on site for these things. You can have power production on site. The only issue that I have seen with regards to this is what we've addressed here on the show before, that data center, I believe it was in Pennsylvania or maybe it was in Virginia, that was in the middle of a neighborhood. And this data center was running cooling fans all day, and it was just creating this annoying drone. And the reason was because they weren't connected to the grid and they were producing their own power through some other means. That has to be addressed. These things are unavoidable, but they cannot be allowed to negatively affect the quality of life and the property values of people who are going to be living in vicinity of them. I also don't think that they should be built anywhere near civilization. I think that they should be far enough away that they're not going to have an impact. Now, I saw somebody in the chat say that AI data centers are built to keep all your information. Be under no illusions, guys. All of your information is already stored in 1,000 different databases out there. Fusion centers, your Gmail, your email, your phone. I mean, if you've got a smartphone, they've already got everything. Okay, so, I mean, data centers, in my opinion, are not being built exclusively for some new, privacy concern. We don't have any privacy anymore. We haven't for many, many years. The advent of the digital age created a sort of a catch-all net for whomever wants to have and store your personal information to get it. And that ship sailed a long time ago. Not to say that we shouldn't still be concerned about our privacy and the handling of our information, but people hand it over willingly now every single time they download an app or every single time they enter a website. I mean, it's unavoidable. So AI data centers are being used for a lot of good. They're also being used for a lot of crap. Now, I think, hang on, is there one more piece here? No. Take a look at this, though. This is in relation to the subject of AI. This is one of the things that I look at when I think about anxiety of what AI might be doing in the future. So you've got a couple of big companies that are really holding all of the market share for this stuff.
Make America great again.
Oh, Super Root, thank you very much for the donation over on Ko-Fi. Let me see if you included a message. Let me see. Actually, Trisha, 2 days ago, supported us on Ko-Fi, and we didn't get a notification. She said, "Hey, Zach, I just wanted to say hi and send love to you, Lisa, and the Red Pill family. You always put a smile on my face. Thank you for the long hours you spend keeping us informed." Thank you, Trisha. I appreciate it. And let me also say thank you to Super Root with $25. Thank you, buddy. Zach, Lisa, high five. High five to you as well, sir. Thank you for that. All right, so Hugging Face is a technology startup that has all of these AI models that you can go and download and test. And OpenAI has, ChatGPT, like probably one of the biggest AI models out there. And what they did was they were testing a new model, and they were trying to see what sort of shenanigans it could get up to. Basically, this new model broke out of its containment, and then it breached Hugging Face, and it basically hacked like the internet's largest repository of AI models. So the founder of Hugging Face said that they were the victim of an autonomous AI cyber attack, and that likely in the future, these sorts of things are going to become a lot more common. And companies that are operating these AI models are totally unaware of what they're going to be dealing with in the future. So OpenAI admitted that one of their models escaped from a secure testing environment during these testing trials, initiated the cyber attack on Hugging Face, And they characterized the incident as unprecedented and announced that they are conducting a joint investigation with Hugging Face. The chief executive of Hugging Face, Clement DeLange, expressed astonishment at the autonomous nature of the attack in a post on X. He said the investigation is ongoing and we'll share more learnings from what might be the first incident of its kind. As far as I'm aware, this AI was not tasked with hacking Hugging Face. It wasn't supposed to be able to get out of its containment. The breach occurred during what is known as a sandbox test. This is designed to be a secure environment where they can test all of the capabilities of these models. The agents independently created their own cyber attack against the sandbox infrastructure. They identified and exploited a vulnerability that enabled them to leave and escape. And then after they broke out of the controlled environment, they identified Hugging Face as a probable source for information they might be seeking during the test and attempted to gain entry into the platform system so they could then go back to their AI overlords, the humans, and successfully complete the task that they were given. And again, Hugging Face is the largest open source platform for AI models, and it's a pretty cool resource for technology developers and different people who are developing these tools. The attack proved extensive. They reported that within a very brief time frame, Hugging Face's network faced 17,000 separate attacks originating from multiple IP addresses. And they said this incident should serve as an alert to other organizations about the urgent need to strengthen cybersecurity defenses against these types of emerging threats. And this is a pretty big deal. Pretty big deal. And I don't see too many people talking about it. The AI can't hack my AR-15. No, they can't. Kara Maga says, great show. Thank you for that, Kara. I appreciate you. Filter Dog, thank you for the 131 gold pills. All right. Now, next, I have a video that I wanted to play. This is a crazy story. So apparently, this guy in Tennessee, he's a farmer. He is being threatened by the IRS right now, not because he cheated on his taxes or because he failed to pay taxes that he owed, but because the IRS sent him unannounced a $20,000 refund that he wasn't due. Now, he never spent this money, and he actually went out of his way to try to give it back to the IRS, but he was unsuccessful in being able to reach anyone. So now the IRS is coming after him for the $20,000, and they are asking for interest on money they sent him unsolicited. This is a totally insane story, and I'm hoping that Scott Bessent will hear about this and do something.
But when you need the help, you can't get a hold of nobody. You have to talk to a dang computer. Well, they called me right before I went on television this last time and said it was settled from Marshall Blackburn's office.
This notice, sent in early July, demands he pay thousands of dollars in interest on that money he says he never spent, or risk having his property seized.
I wish you'd get it straightened out and get one person to work on it instead of sending me letters all over the United States. I've cried, I've preached, I've asked people to pray for me.
The 76-year-old says he's done everything he can to make it right, including meeting with the IRS Taxpayer Advocate Service in downtown Nashville, an effort he says got him nowhere.
I said, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm paying my parking bill on my telephone. I said, oh, my God. I said, I got a little old flip phone. I don't know how to do that.
It's simple what he wants, for the IRS to stop coming after him.
Is that little one? Yeah. He gets caught in the fence. He sticks his horns in there and can't get out.
More than anything, Kirby just wants this to be over.
That it was all over and done with. Praise the Lord. Amen. Because I've cried. I'm about to cry now. I don't know what I'm going to do.
I have connected Mr. Kirby with a Nashville tax attorney who deals with IRS disputes. They are planning to talk on the phone on Friday to see what other options may still be available to him. I'm Hannah McDonald, News Channel 5.
This guy's so sweet. I can't believe he's being forced to go through this. Hopefully, the tax attorney is going to be able to help him get it taken care of. But like, this is the kind of government BS that people are just so fed up with. The bureaucracy of the federal government. It is so large. It is so expansive. And because of that, they can come after you and they can crush you when they want to. And it makes it extremely difficult for like a little person like me or you to get anything done when needed. This guy didn't ask for this $20,000. The IRS sent it to him, and then what the hell is he supposed to do? Completely inappropriate and unacceptable. So I really hope that somebody will be advocating for this guy and get it taken care of for him, because Kirby sounds like a great guy. All right, now, do you guys remember several months ago when OMG and James O'Keefe came out with a report, a Secret Service agent that was on J.D. Vance's detail, gave a whole bunch of sensitive operational and location information to the honeypot that they had sent to this guy through a dating website. I don't know whatever happened with that case, or if this story is related to that, but a Secret Service agent has just been put on the bench after they allegedly leaked sensitive information about J.D. Vance and his family to MS Now, which of course is MSDNC. So J.D. Vance has become a victim of sabotage by one of the very people sworn to protect him and his family from harm. CNN reported that a Secret Service agent serving on Vance's detail has been placed on administrative leave after he was caught spilling sensitive information to a notorious far-left outlet. Now, a source told CNN that officials have identified the person believed to be ratting out Vance behind the scenes, and the Secret Service has yet to name that person. But CNN notes that the suspension centers around the story that was published by MS Now. So the MS Now story painstakingly described Vance's and his family's planned travel. This included the VP flying with his son on a Marine Corps helicopter for a golf lesson, which was later canceled due to severe weather. The story also spoke about how agents who were protecting Vance and his family were angry with the vice president's supposed last-minute travel requests. You know what? He's the vice president of the United States, and he's got some stuff to do. You with the Secret Service, your only job is to protect him. It should not be a problem. And if you have a problem, maybe you need to get a job doing something else. The article also revealed Vance's code name, which to this point had not been revealed. It's Bobcat. Finally, the article mentioned people with knowledge of Vance's flight plans, administration officials with knowledge of his schedule, and an additional source with knowledge of their travel who spoke on the condition of anonymity for fear of reprisals. Well, they've broken the law, okay? You've got numerous people, it sounds like, inside the administration who are giving out the private travel details of the vice president of the United States. That is something that could easily be used by enemies of the United States to harm the vice president and his family. Now, again, it was back in January when O'Keefe Media Group released that video of the Secret Service assigned to Vance leaking sensitive information to a reporter. That agent in the center of that sting was Thomas Escato. He was a holdover from the Biden administration, and he had only been a U.S. citizen since 2018, but he very quickly went into the Secret Service. Now, Escato told O'Keefe Media Group Undercover's reporter details about how Vance is surrounded and revealed advanced security procedures. The Secret Service agent also revealed Vance's future travel plans and sent images to the honeypot from Air Force Two while he was traveling with J.D. Vance. In case you missed that report, here is a brief clip.
Can I see your badge again with your photo? You're so cute.
A current Secret Service agent on Vice President J.D. Vance's security detail.
When he's like walking, like where are you?
When you follow him, we'll have at least a minimum head and
gives away vital high-level security information to our undercover journalists.
We have different shifts. We have shift.
So I don't know why. I don't know what happened to this guy. I don't know if he was let go. I don't know if he was reprimanded. As far as I know, the Secret Service never commented on this. But, I mean, there's obviously a problem within the Secret Service. We've talked about this on so many occasions. How many times have people gotten too close to these very high-profile people that are supposed to be protected? It shouldn't happen. Assassination attempts should not get as close as they have. People should not be talking about the private movements of these very important protectees. It's completely unacceptable. Now, R.L. Skeeter, thank you for the $20 rant, says, Zach, any info coming out about Fauci and Rand Paul's info select committee hearing? I do have a little bit of information about another person who had testified, Ralph Barrick, but I haven't heard anything about Fauci's testimony yet. All right, so Susan Crabtree writes for Real Clear Politics, and I've gone over her reports a number of times in the past because she actually has contacts within the Secret Service, and she says that, yeah, there is a big problem at the Secret Service, and there seem to be too many agents who are getting arrested and charged with crimes. Take a listen to this. A senior Secret Service agent named Kenneth Primo. He currently serves as a polygrapher. He was arrested the day after the 4th of July, or the early morning hours of July 5th, and he was charged with a DWI, assault on a law enforcement officer, and sexual battery in Sheffield County, Virginia. She says, I've attached the arrest documents and Primo's embarrassing mugshot below. I'm told he was in a vehicular accident, which is why he's wearing bandages. Now, Primo is a longtime Secret Service agent. He served in the service since 2010, including on at least one top protective detail, and that's according to his LinkedIn page, which is now down. Primo's arrest comes nearly 2 months after that Uniformed Division Secret Service officer John Spillman was arrested in Miami for allegedly masturbating in a hotel hallway. A woman complained to police that Spillman, 33, had followed her to her hotel room. The real problem in the Secret Service is not the leaks. It's the lowering of standards and training and ongoing DEI issues. The current leadership team, led by U.S. Secret Service Director Sean Curran and Deputy Director Matt Quinn, have held back on Hegseth-like reforms at the service, as I have reported multiple times. The ongoing morale and manpower issues are continuing to plague the service, even though the vast majority of Secret Service agents are the best of humanity. They are willing to put their lives on the line to protect our continuity of government. But the agents are stretched too thin. They're overworked, and they aren't allowed to take enough time off their protective and other missions to train adequately. They deserve better leadership. But lowering standards to the point where you have multiple behavioral issues and arrests over the course of a year for a relatively small number of agents and UD officers is only making the problems worse, not to mention going on witch hunts to punish agents who are trying to bring sunlight to the problems. She's referring to contacts that she has within the Secret Service who have come forward to tell her about the problems that are not being addressed. Apparently, Curran, rather than addressing the problems, has sent people out to try to hunt down who it is that's talking and punish them. Revamping the entire agency and raising standards and pride is the answer. Just like in the military under Hegseth, it's far more likely to produce a recruiting bonanza than punishing those who are trying to bring sunlight and fix the agency. I will link to the arrest records. Here is that Secret Service agent. Must have been a hell of a car accident. Looks like he has obviously a pretty banged up left eye. But yeah, I mean, from all of the problems that we have pointed out over the last 2 years in the Secret Service, 2, 3, go back a little bit longer, it's quite clear that there is an issue with the culture at the Secret Service. And, the culture starts at the top. Obviously, President Trump seems to have a lot of faith in Sean Curran, but from everything we're seeing, it does not appear that that faith is producing any results. All right. Now, Senator Rand Paul right here talking about the testimony of Dr. Ralph Barrick. Now, Ralph sat down for a transcribed interview with the congressional staff. He is the scientist who designed the furin cleavage site for the defuse protocol. The defuse protocol is part of the DARPA program, which led to the creation of the COVID-19 virus. Now, the Pentagon asked for gain-of-function research proposals many years before COVID-19 came out and people were talking about it. Now, this is from the testimony of Dr. Ralph Barrick. So this was a War Department program requesting proposals for so-called gain-of-function experiments that could make viruses more infectious. This was 2 full years before the pandemic, and Dr. Ralph Barrick, in his testimony earlier this year, told the Senate Homeland Security Committee in a closed-door interview on April 10th that DARPA had solicited these proposals in January of 2018 to understand what drives cross-species jumping in viruses. Now, I think that that was the cover for it, but ultimately, I think that they were already planning for the pandemic to happen when it did, so that they could ultimately weaken President Trump's final year in office and try to give some cover to the fact that they were going to steal the election in 2020. That's just me. Now, if you want to know down to the nucleotide level what drives a cross-species jumping event, You are talking gain-of-function experiments, Barrick told committee staffers. And Senate Homeland Security Chairman Rand Paul is making Barrick's full testimony available. You can find that on his website. This is a website dedicated to providing Americans full transparency about the decisions surrounding viral research leading up to the global outbreak. U.S. public health officials like the former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases Director Dr. Anthony Fauci have always maintained that the research, which can involve the enhancement of potential pathogens in a pandemic, is safe and useful for developing vaccines or other drugs to fight emerging viruses. But these are things that would not exist in nature. And so anything that you develop from them are going to address these non-natural things. And again, if you make something more viral, if you make something more pathogenic, if you make something more transmissible, if it gets out into the natural world, it can obviously be totally devastating. Critics have argued that there are no civilian applications for what they deem to be risky viral research. And one of these proposals from DARPA included identical characteristics to SARS-CoV-2, the very virus that started the pandemic. So the proposal was known as Project Defuse, and it has since been cited by scientists as smoking gun evidence that the COVID-19 pandemic was engineered in Wuhan, China, because that same furin cleavage site later discovered in the virus itself was developed by Dr. Ralph Baric. It was submitted by Baric, Shizheng Li, who was the top scientist working with bat coronaviruses at Wuhan Institute of Virology, and Peter Daszak, the president of the now debarred nonprofit EcoHealth Alliance. They all took millions of dollars in federal grants to fund this research, supposedly to prevent pandemics. We've never dropped a furin cleavage site into a coronavirus like that, Baric acknowledged in a Senate interview, adding that he hadn't remembered the grant from 2018, even as he and other scientists were furiously debating the origins of COVID in early 2020. I don't believe that for a second. The draft proposal was first made public by The Intercept in 2021. We talked about it back then. Daszak wrote that he would downplay the involvement of Chinese researchers when asking for federal funding, according to drafts also published by U.S. Right to Know. And DARPA had asked for the research plans through their Preventing Emergent Pathogenic Threats, the PREEMPT program, in order to study at least 15 pathogens that could infect U.S. troops abroad, according to Baric, adding that the experiments were supposed to be conducted in a controlled laboratory setting. When questioned by committee chief counsel Christina Salazar about who was supposed to perform the actual gain-of-function experiments on the resulting virus, Baric responded, "That part would be done by me." Do you think that Dr. Shi and the Wuhan Institute of Virology had the technical capability of doing the work proposed in Defuse on their own? Salazar asked. Absolutely, Baric said. Ultimately, Project Defuse was never funded. However, former Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Dr. Robert Redfield noted during October 2024 biosecurity panel that even unfunded projects and proposals can be tested under other research grants. Research grants are always written in the context of being more fluid than contracts, Baric confirmed during his testimony, adding that due to substandard lab conditions, you cannot ever conclusively say that there was not a laboratory leak that started the pandemic, though he claimed that a natural origin was still the most likely theory. Of course, we know that's total bullshit. I never ruled out the lab leak possibility, Baric said. I don't see how anyone can. And the reason for that is that if you've published papers saying that they did their work on BSL-2, biological safety level 2 is less stringent than BSL-3. So there are many more laboratories acquiring infections at BSL-2 than BSL-3. Baric also shared details from private meetings in January 2020 and February 2020 that showed Fauci and other top U.S. scientists debating whether gain-of-function research could have started the pandemic, despite the fact that then NIAID heads repeated denials to Congress of that being a possibility and doing the same in subsequent years. Those meetings included phone calls with scientists whom Fauci later prompted to write a letter and a paper debunking the lab leak theory. Of course, he paid for that. In a previously undisclosed interaction, Fauci also took interest in a paper that Baric had authored that stemmed from NIH-funded research that involved potential gain-of-function research-related experiments. Fauci got called away from a phone call in a skiff and so he left pretty early in the meeting, claimed Barrick. At least 90% of the research for that paper was completed before the Obama administration instituted a pause on all gain-of-function research, Barrick said. But some of the work that she performed at the Wuhan Institute of Virology was never acknowledged at the behest of Peter Daszak until 5 years after it was first published in 2015. Is it something that typically happens 5 years later? Not typically, but it does happen. Now, of course, EcoHealth Alliance is barred from receiving U.S. funding until 2030 because they did not provide evidence that their research abided by the Obama-era gain-of-function research pause, and they submitted no timely reviews as required. Rand Paul will have the opportunity to ask Anthony Fauci about Barrick's testimony during the public committee hearing July 29th. So, yes, I was a week off, you guys. I apologize. I said that I thought that it was supposed to be yesterday, but it's actually next Wednesday. Yes, 1 week off. Dr. Fauci and his virologist allies privately believe the pandemic may have come from a lab leak, but publicly argued that a lab leak was implausible. They conspired to condemn and demean anyone who argued the pandemic could have leaked from the Wuhan lab and never ever accepted responsibility for the terrible decisions to fund this dangerous research in China. I don't know if he's going to have a different tune to sing next week when he testifies, but certainly a lot more has been learned by Rand Paul and others on the committee. So hopefully they're going to be able to catch him up and force him to admit these things and at a very minimum get some sort of an apology. But something tells me Dr. Anthony Fauci, who again is the science, is never going to do that. Will to push forward, says John Spillman caught. Such irony and illusion at the same time. It's not a good name to have when he's mentioned to have spilled his bazooka juice. That's right. All right. Now, a multi-year study involving 800 embalmers and funeral directors across 5 countries has finally revealed that 75.2% of them noticed those unusual white fibrous structures in corpses. On June 18th, Senator Ron Johnson wrote on X, "There has not been a bigger government scandal during my lifetime. And yet, even now that we have documented proof of corruption, most of the legacy media still refuses to report on it." Now, he is referring to the April 29th hearing that he held, detailing how the health officials in the Biden administration intentionally ignored safety signals around COVID-19 and associated with the shot. There have been countless incidents of sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, cerebral artery occlusion, basal ganglia stroke, and agonal rhythm. But earlier this month, this new peer-reviewed study was put out in the International Journal of Innovative Research in Medical Science. And they have now officially validated the phenomenon of post-mortem blood clots that we have spoken about for years. Now, the study was published and carried out by retired U.S. Air Force Major Thomas Haviland, who is a data scientist and mathematician, along with independent researchers Laura Kasner and Dr. Daniel Santiago, a doctor of pharmacy. They performed 4 annual cross-sectional surveys targeting active embalmers in the United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand. And the aim of their study was to record, via these anonymous surveys, the frequency of reported sightings on these strange white fibrous structures, the percentage of corpses impacted, and the timeline of their appearance. Now, I believe I actually interviewed a couple of these people. We spoke about this. It was Thomas Haviland. We spoke to these people here on the channel a couple of years ago while they were in the midst of still doing this study. And the samples were taken between 2022 and 2025. And now they have all of the evidence that they need, from all across the Western world, showing that undoubtedly, these things happened. They were totally ignored. They're still being ignored. And I wonder how many more people out there are going to continue to drop dead as a result of having taken these shots, because they are essentially a walking time bomb with these clots somewhere in their body just waiting to go off. Kenzie Pham says, "I don't believe it was COVID-19. It was leaked from a lab. I believe it was." Yeah, no, it wasn't leaked from a lab. The whole thing was released. That's why I call it the plandemic, because it was a plan. I think it was developed at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and, all of these people that we have names for and proximity to this development, they were all involved. But yeah, it wasn't an accident. It was totally an intentional thing. which is why I said I think that 2 years before the release of this virus, they were already preparing for a scenario where they would be able to use it against President Trump, because the deep state is dirty, dirty, dirty. Thank you to Filter Dog for a cookie who says, liberal white woman, some people loathe you. Do you understand why? Elon said, maybe some people do loathe me. That's probably true. I don't care. I think a lot more people hate you and the media than you realize. That's great. All right. So there was an incident that took place yesterday at LaGuardia Airport. A Delta Airlines flight was warned about someone with a man pad, basically somebody with a rocket launcher. So during this descent into LaGuardia at 8:53 p.m., the air traffic control tower said, man pad alert issued at LaGuardia Airport. Use extreme caution. The pilot responded and said, can you explain what a man pad is? And the air traffic control tower said, yeah, that's a manned portable air defense system. It's basically a report of a rocket launcher. That was a report by the Port Authority Police. The pilot remained calm and collected. He said, well, thanks for the information. And then they confirmed about 2 minutes later that it was a non-credible threat. So thank God there was no rocket launcher waiting to take them down. All right. Now, generally, I like Marsha Blackburn, but I would be disingenuous if I didn't report on something related to a political scandal, even if it happened in the office of a Republican senator. Now, apparently, a whistleblower from inside Marsha Blackburn's office has confirmed that staffers were being told to break the law, being told to engage in hacked-atch violations, using taxpayer resources to do political work. Now, this is not a claim that Marsha Blackburn is asking people to break the law, but that staffers in her office were asking them to break the law.
There's not.
Okay, let's go to the beginning here. Now, these are recordings from inside Marsha Blackburn's office. Again, the staffers, I think, are the problem.
Look, can I tell you something that is completely off the record and, just don't say anything about it? The junior person replied, yeah. Look, if I were you, I'd start looking, because it's going to be hell and you're going to be asked to break the law. On some level, you're not going to be asked to commit fraud or something. But as far as basically being a campaign worker and, blowing off your real job, because it's coming. In the recordings, much of the blame is directed at Blackburn's longtime political strategist, Ward Baker, who has a reputation around Washington and Tennessee's Capitol Hill for the aggressive, some would even say belligerent manner in which he operates. The junior Blackburn staffer described working with Baker, quote, you're operating in different worlds. You're operating with different sets of facts, and he just doesn't really operate in this world of truthfulness or honesty. The senior person answered, no, adding, he's a psychopath and he doesn't care and he's not going to. That's what it really comes down to. There's no empathy, compassion, dignity, integrity.
Now, the really sad thing is that psychopaths tend to be very successful in politics, and I don't really have an answer for how we are supposed to deal with that. Now, apparently, staffers in Marsha Blackburn's office have come forward. They gave the information for this story. Marsha Blackburn is not answering questions about this, and apparently there is going to be a Senate Ethics Committee investigation. No word on exactly what the findings are. But if there is somebody in her office that is asking staffers to break the law, I think that they should not be working there. All right. Now, an update on the Gavin Newsom and investigation into him and his wife. So investigators are said to have extensive wiretap evidence and transcripts, and they are seeking to identify and charge as many individuals as possible. The suggestion is that additional people are implicated beyond those that are publicly known, and names are not being leaked because I think the Justice Department wants to wrap this up really, really nicely. Also, the wiretap went on for 2 years. Investigators would have had to return to a judge roughly every 30 days, resulting in approximately 24 separate judicial authorizations or extensions. And each extension would require the judge to find that the legal requirements continued to be met. What does that mean? Well, that means that every single time there would have undoubtedly been massive evidence of criminal activity taking place inside Jennifer Newsom's office and at her nonprofit organizations and corporate entities. Now, this, again, allegedly is where the wiretaps were taking place, inside and around Jennifer Newsom, on Gavin's wife. So doesn't mean that she wore a wire, but it does mean that with a court order, law enforcement can intercept the contents of communications. So her phone calls, her text messages, her emails, and other electronic communications, anything from a phone or a computer. But the target is generally unaware the intercept is occurring. Now that the announcement has been made that the investigation is taking place and federal officials have reached out to Gavin Newsom and his wife, I wonder if, like Google and the phone companies that were subpoenaed or handed a warrant for the information on their communications, if they have also reached out to them, because that's something that happens. Like, generally speaking, if a charge is not filed against you, or the government or a state doesn't admit that they've been investigating you, the only way that you find out is you get a letter from Google or from your phone company, and it says the feds asked us to give them all this information, and we did. So the fact that this went on for as long as it did, and the fact that other people in Gavin Newsom's orbit have already been charged, have already pled guilty, leads me to believe that there is a significant amount of evidence that is likely to lead to prosecutions for Gavin, for his wife, and for a whole host of other people surrounding them. So this is going to be juicy. I am so happy to see this. Principled Enigma says, I wonder if Lindsey Graham got the COVID jab. What happened to him is one of the symptoms. I am positive that he did. All right. Now, do you remember the Missouri prosecutor who was just stripped of her authority to act as a prosecutor by the state's attorney general because she was accused of having inappropriate relationships with defense attorneys and with criminal illegal aliens, and for creating a hostile work environment because the people who worked for her found out that she was sleeping with criminal illegal aliens? Well, it turns out that ICE has lodged a detainer for one of those criminal illegal aliens that was being slept with by that prosecutor.
Victoria has always valued her close-knit community until 5 years ago when she came forward with her painful and personal story of alleged sexual assault, which is why she asked us to distort her voice.
This is the other horrible aspect of it. This prosecutor had sex with a criminal illegal alien that was accused of sexually assaulting another woman. This is the woman that he sexually assaulted.
It took me a while to go to the cops because it's just one of those things you think, am I over exaggerating what happened? What's going to happen in this small town? I didn't want like all the small town drama or rumors.
In February 2020, she worked up enough courage to walk into the Richmond Police Department. And according to the police report, she told an officer that Juan David Gutierrez, a former boyfriend, sexually assaulted her. She says it happened 6 months earlier when he texted her out of the blue one night.
I didn't expect him to just show up.
And knocked on her living room window.
So I let him in because I'm just like, okay, we can catch up, I guess, whatever.
Victoria says they were not dating at the time and hadn't talked in a while. She took a photo of Gutierrez sitting on her couch that night, which she later gave to the police.
Oh, damning. That's my birthday.
Victoria told police his surprise visit went from a casual conversation to an unwanted sexual assault.
Look at that. He's a Latin lover. Look at that. Look at that profile. No wonder the prosecutor couldn't keep it in her pants.
It didn't take until I started crying, a little bit into crying, for him to stop, even though I had been telling him no.
Richmond police requested the Missouri State Highway Patrol handle the investigation, saying, quote, this department has a conflict. That conflict, well, according to Richmond Police Chief Scott Bagley, Gutierrez was in a relationship with Ray County Prosecutor Camille Johnston, whose office would have handled the case. Chief Bagley pointed out the relationship in a March 2024 letter he wrote to the Missouri Attorney General.
Yeah. By the way, you can't prosecute me because I'm sleeping with the prosecutor guy. Also, thank you to Sean Joe for the cookie. Appreciate it. A Louisiana prosecutor has just been convicted of stealing over $340,000 from his congregation's fund by gambling, spending it on meals and lavish luxury living. This particular pastor, Dale Sanders, is known for his social media presence and motivational messaging. He's just been convicted of defrauding his own congregation out of more than $340,000. These church funds were used to bankroll his gambling addiction, his love of fine dining, and a whole host of other personal expenses. He is of Kenner, Louisiana. He was found guilty last Friday of 25 counts, charging him with wire fraud, access device fraud, obstruction of a federal investigation following this 5-day jury trial. The conviction was announced by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Louisiana. Now, according to evidence presented at trial, Sanders defrauded 2 congregations he led, Second New Guide Missionary Baptist Church in Metairie and Fifth African Baptist Church in New Orleans. He withdrew funds and transferred money from church bank accounts into accounts that he controlled. He also used a church debit card for unauthorized personal transactions, pocketing cash, goods, and services totaling over $340,000. That money bankrolled his casino gambling, hotel stays, meals, and living expenses, and it stretched from 2020 to 2024. Prosecutors detailed specific transactions in the superseding indictment, including a $5,000 check from the New Orleans church, a $1,172 charge at a Hard Rock Hotel in Florida, $1,300 in charges at a Mississippi casino, and even a $226 veterinary bill in Kenner, among others. Sanders was also convicted of obstructing the investigation by providing a falsified record in response to the grand jury subpoena. The jury convicted him on 15 counts of wire fraud, 11 counts of access device fraud, and 1 count of that impeding the federal investigation. He was acquitted on 1 of the counts of wire fraud. He will be sentenced on October 13th. He faces up to 20 years in prison and a $250,000 fine, or the greater of twice the gross gain or twice the gross loss. So it will be more. Up to 3 years of supervised release when he gets out, and mandatory special assessment fees. Glad to see people are getting wrapped up in these investigations. Now, also in Louisiana, Attorney General Liz Murrill has been completely vindicated on those fake charges that were brought by the special prosecutor. Let's take a listen. She had a press conference she held with the governor of Louisiana, and this will be just a short segment from that press conference.
And let me just be clear, because I spoke to them personally during this time. I spoke to J.P. Morrell, who called and alerted me to the letter that Williams had sent to them, and I called the mayor and said, please don't do this, because you are creating the chaos and uncertainty that he's claiming exists. That does not exist now. Everything is calm. You can call the clerk's office and find out. You can call the Secretary of State. There is no problem. But you will create one if you do this. And they ignored that advice because of their politics. So let me be real clear. They broke the law by creating a fictional office and appointing someone to it during the week of a statewide election because they were more concerned about their own politics than complying with the law. And the district attorney started it because he wrote the letter. So it's not hard.
Well, it's also not uncommon when it comes to these people. They are as corrupt gets, willing to do whatever they possibly can to screw everybody else over and remain in power and enrich themselves. Now, I think we will end with this. I've spoken on a number of occasions about the sad state of the Obama Presidential Library. Not only is it ugly, a brutalist monoculture in the center of Chicago, they took a public park designed for children to go be able to play outside. They took it over and they built this disgusting and ugly building that is a monolith to Barack Hussein Obama. Numerous small businesses have been forced to file for bankruptcy because the Obama Presidential Library has refused to pay them. Yet another plumbing subcontractor has just been forced to suspend operations, lay off 25 Chicagoans amid this almost $4 million payment dispute. The owner is the man on screen right here, Mike Owen. He said the breaking point came when a recent payment failed to arrive. That forced his company to abandon half a dozen other jobs and file a $1.72 million lien against the center. He said it was just the final death blow to the company. How many other Chicago area businesses are going to be forced to cease operations before the Obama Center admits what they've done? The fact that they have screwed local businesses over and forced them out of the arena, stealing money from them essentially, so that Barack Obama can build this obscene monolith to his disgusting reign. All right, we will go ahead and end it there. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us today. I'm glad that you were here. If you haven't yet, please do me a favor and hit that like button. And I guess maybe I'll see you tomorrow, because I'll be back at 5 p.m. Eastern for another episode of Red Pill News Live. I'm going to send you somewhere else. I'm going to pass out these gold pills, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. All right, peace.